Hello friends, for those of you who don't already know, my name is Norbert and I'll be your instructor for this course. In this course we will learn about Visual Studio Code, the most powerful code/text editor out there. Now why use Visual Studio Code? If you're interested in web development or crunching data with Python, then Visual Studio Code is the perfect code/text editor out there for you. And it's free! Because it's the most popular code editor out there, Visual Studio Code has tons of extensions that makes our lives as code editors 100 times more easier. Visual Studio Code will not make you a better coder, but it will definitely make you a faster coder by using the most powerful extensions on the market. So together we will learn about the following: how to download and install Visual Studio Code. We will also make a full rundown of the UI, learning about what is where and what does it do. Then I will try to increase your productivity by learning about things like IntelliSense, Emmet for HTML5 and CSS, and how to navigate the code quicker. Then we will install Visual Studio Code's most powerful extensions. And I categorize them into three categories: essential extensions, cosmetic extensions, could live without them, but they're excellent. Then the third one, environmental extensions. So this is depending on if you're working in a framework and in which framework you're working in. After that, I will try to turn that knob and increase that productivity one level higher by learning about snippets and also creating our own snippets, which just increases productivity to 1000%. And of course, what is a code editor without shortcuts? Now I will show you Visual Studio Code's most used shortcut, how you can create your own shortcuts. And of course, if you're coming for another text editor like Atom or Brackets or for example Sublime Text, then you can bring your own shortcuts and install them in there. And of course, if you're getting tired of looking at the same code all over again, then we will install a few themes which will just freshen up that code for us. We will also learn about the integrated terminal and how to sync up different instances of Visual Studio Code. For example, you're in one workplace, then you're in another workplace, then you're at home, then you're on vacation and you're still coding, you'll have the same feel all over the place. And we will also set up environments like Sass, Node.js with NPM, Node Package Manager, React, Angular, Vue, and of course for data crunching, Python. So let's get started with the most powerful code editor out there, Visual Studio Code. See you in the course. Bye-bye. Hello and welcome to the course. In the next couple of minutes, we'll just take a short course overview in order for you to know what you're getting yourselves into. We will get started with, well, talking a bit about Visual Studio Code, what it is, what it can do, what it's good for, what it's not good for. It's actually good for everything, almost, well, you know. And then we will go ahead, download it, install it, Mac and PC, and get to know each other, or get to know the UI actually. In the UI, we'll have a bit of basic overview, what is where, what does what, but actually we'll also go deeper into the UI, and then we will start creating, opening, editing, deleting project folders and files. Then we'll go ahead and save, set up autosave, set up time saves. Then we'll change the display and also create a bit of a grid system. And of course, what is a program without updates? When should you do them? How often should you do them? Should you do them automatically? How to avoid them? And don't avoid them. They're excellent, believe me. After that, we will finally get into what is important in Visual Studio Code. IntelliSense, amazing. Emmet, amazing. If you never used Emmet or never heard about Emmet, Google Emmet a bit. You'll see it's a thing on its own and it makes you, well, not a better, but an extremely efficient coder. It makes your life much easier, let's just say about that. Also, we will learn how to navigate through our code and finding and replacing code instances. One of the most important features of Visual Studio Code are the extensions. You will see that Visual Studio Code, when we download it, the bare boned Visual Studio Code, well, it's good for everything and nothing, because you need to customize Visual Studio Code for your environment. Are you a web developer? Are you a Python developer? Are you a front-end developer? A back-end developer? And we'll go through all of the extensions which I categorized into three, which are essential extensions, optional extensions or cosmetic extensions, and environmental specific extensions for React, for Vue, for Python, and so far and so on. Or for Node. Well, you need Node. You need Node. You just need Node. There's no way around Node. After we got our extensions set up, we need to get into a few snippets. Are you using only vanilla JavaScript or frameworks? You will love snippets. snippets that are built in, and we'll also customize our own snippets. And of course, what is a code editor without shortcuts? You need to become like a ninja on the keyboard, and everything works. Never touch the mouse. You will touch the mouse, don't worry about it. Also, if you're coming from a different code editor, like for example, Atom, I'll show you how you can import your Atom settings and use them in Visual Studio Code. And of course, if you get bored with how Visual Studio Code looks or how your code looks, then we can customize it by customizing colors with existing colors which are already built into Visual Studio Code, and then download a few pretty amazing custom themes and icons. Also, you can customize your own theme. Then we will get to our integrated terminal, which is an essential tool in Visual Studio Code. Now you can install, also depending on PC or Mac user, you will have different terminals or command prompt as it's called in Windows. But no matter what you use, it's pretty much the same. It's only a user preference, but you need to know your terminal. If you didn't know this already, Visual Studio Code can be synced up. This means no matter where you are, how many workplaces you are, you can have exactly the same experience of Visual Studio Code in each instance or in each place that you're working on. If you wish to up your CSS game, then we will also install Sass. If you never heard about Sass, Sass stands for Syntactically Awesome Style Sheets. Sass is like CSS Big Brother, or CSS on steroids as we like to call it. Now this is actually just a preprocessor. You will not learn actual Sass here, but I will show you how you can install and pretty much set up your environment for using Sass. After that, we'll go to Node.js, talk a bit about Node.js, what it is, what it can do, and setting up our Node.js and NPM in our Visual Studio Code. Then we will go ahead and install React on Visual Studio Code, also talk a bit about React. Again, you will not learn React here, you will just learn how to set up React if you want to use React later on. The same goes for Angular. We'll talk a bit about Angular and then set up our environment in Angular. And last but not least, the Vue framework. Also, what is Vue and how to set it up in Visual Studio Code. After that, we'll go into Python, set up Python, write a short hello world Python. And then you're good to go. You are a Visual Studio Code, well, not expert, but you pretty much know Visual Studio Code at this point. So let's get started with the course. So what is Visual Studio Code and why should you use it? Or should you use brackets or Atom or Sublime Text? In my opinion, right now, Visual Studio Code is the best code editor out there. But I'm not married to my thoughts and to my decisions. If this changes, then something else is the best. This was just my opinion, and with this being said, what is Visual Studio Code? Well, these are facts. Visual Studio Code is a lightweight but powerful source code editor which runs on your desktop, and it's available for Windows, macOS, and Linux. And it is also referred as VS Code. So if you hear me in the future saying VS Code, I'm referring to Visual Studio Code, of course. Now, please do not confuse this with Visual Studio, that is something else. And as I said, this is available. Now, I'm on a Mac for now. And also each time I will give examples, I will also give examples for Mac and for PC. So, because right now I'm on a Mac, this shows me that I should download it for a Mac. Now, if you click down here, you will see you can choose any other download. Like for the Windows 65, for the Windows 64 edition and for Linux 64 edition. Now, so if you click on other platforms, you will see where here are the download links. Now, Visual Studio Code was created by Microsoft, and big surprise, it's free. It's actually something created by Microsoft and it's free. And the really cool thing about Visual Studio Code, because I use it mostly for web development, but it was built with something called Electron. Now let me show you Electron very quick. Electron is used to build cross-platform desktop application with JavaScript, HTML, and CSS. So isn't this cool? But now back to Visual Studio Code, a quick thing about, and also Electron was used to build things like WhatsApp, the desktop applications. If you didn't know, you could have WhatsApp on your desktop. Twitch, which is a great streaming app, Microsoft Teams, and Figma, which is also awesome if you want to create web design. Now let's move back to Visual Studio Code. Now it is not a full IDE, which means integrated development environment, like for example Visual Studio, which is specific for C++ or C#, but which can also be written in Visual Studio Code. But it's, like I said, a lightweight code/text editor, which becomes more powerful with each add-on or extensions that we will take a look at a bit later on. Now, when you download it, it takes up under 200 megabytes, or on your drive, I almost said hard disk drive, it's like in the good old days, not like a couple of gigabytes, which Visual Studio would take up. Now, as I said, Visual Studio Code is at the moment the most popular code editor out there. That is why it also has tons of really useful extensions, like for languages, C++, C#, Go, Java, Python. It has tools like JS Hint, PowerShell. It has great debuggers for Chrome, PHP, Xdebug, and keymaps like from Vim, Sublime Text, IntelliJS, ECMAS, Atom, Visual Studio, Eclipse, a lot of them. It also has IntelliSense in it. As I said, it can debug. It can be integrated with Git, and it has a lot of amazing extensions. And it also comes with built-in support for JavaScript, TypeScript, and Node.js. And it has a rich ecosystem of extensions for languages and runtimes, such as .NET and Unity. Yep, Unity, that thing that we build games with. So is there not a reason to use Visual Studio Code as your code editor? I don't think there is. Now, getting up and running with Visual Studio Code is quick and easy. It is a small download, so you can install it in a matter of minutes and you're ready to run Visual Studio Code. Now, VS Code is lightweight and it should run on most available hardware and platforms out there. Now, let's go to Visual Studio Code. So either you just type in code.visualstudio.com and you should get Visual Studio Code. Now, as I said, down here, depending on if you're a Mac or if you are on a PC, like here, you can choose on which platform you should download it. And one quick note, there are two different downloads. As you can see here, it says here stable build. Now, what does this mean? The stable build is the build that is, well, stable first of all, but it's the build where each and every add-on that is released is already debugged and it works smoothly. On the other hand, there's the Insider Edition. Now, I rarely use the Insider Edition, although it works perfectly. But you do get each and every update before others. So if you're using the Stable Edition, you get the update a bit later on. And if you're using the Insider Edition, it's out there. Now, I will download and install the Insider Edition just to show you how this works. The Insider Edition, and we will also go through this entire course, but there's literally no difference between the Insider Edition and the Stable Edition. I, for my part, use the Stable Edition, and it has only one reason. You will get an insane amount of updates each and every month with the Insider Edition. I don't like that. So let's first of all get started by installing it on Windows. Now, on Windows it's pretty straightforward. You can just click here, download, and it will start your download. Whatever you choose, I'll choose desktop, save it, and as soon as the download is done, click on it. Now let's go back to the downloads and let's also download the Insider Edition, so you can have both of them on your machine. As you can see, it runs on Windows 7, 8, and 10. So let's click on download. I'm going to choose the same path. You can choose whatever path you want, obviously. So you can see it's only 60 megabytes. It's a really small download. Now let's open it, install it. I accept and agree. Create or not create an icon, doesn't really matter. Add open code inside of it. Yes, yes, yes. No, I don't want to register. Add path, install. And after we finish, we're going to launch it. And it's exactly the same thing as the stable build. So when you start out, you will see you will get greeted with this starter greeting page, and well, yeah, that's pretty much to it. Now let's also download it on Mac. Now on a Mac, it's a bit different. Well, not the download part, but the installation part. If you're Mac, you already know that your applications need to be in an application. So let's download the Insider Edition. Let's just save it somewhere, download it. Now this has a bit more. You can see it has 90 megabits, but that's just nothing. Now if you download it, you need to install it. So let's open it. But as I said, there's a difference. The installation didn't happen where I wanted. So you need to grab onto your Visual Studio Code app and drag and drop it into your applications. So just open up your applications and drag and drop Visual Studio Code in there. Now let's open it up. And as I said, it looks pretty much the same on both devices. Okay, so that's it for the download and installation part. Now let's do some basic UI orientation. So after we have our Visual Studio Code opened up, this is what you get. You'll get this welcome page, which you could also deactivate from down here if you want. So show welcome page on startup. If you uncheck this checkbox, you will no longer see it. And it's just a basic information here. Start with new file, new folder. We will talk about this later on when we're creating files and folders. But just now, you basically cannot create only files. You need to have them in a folder. So you also have your recent, open up some project, just open up the project so we can have an example. So yeah, let's get started with our basic orientation. Now, this right here is the editor. And let me create a few new files, not a folder, a few new files. Let's go back in here and let me just create a few one. I just used a shortcut, Command N on Mac and Control N on a PC. And we will also talk about shortcuts a bit later on. Now, I opened up a few files. I can type something in here or type something in here, go on the next line, hitting enter, typing something in. If you ever use the code editor, you know the basics. But you could also split this up. So I could drag and drop this down here, and I could drag it, for example, down here. Come on. Oh, there it goes. And I could type something in here and see what is happening here. So yeah. Now we could also close them up, and it would ask me, no, don't want to save you, and also don't want to save you and you. Now let me quickly open up another project, the existing project, so I can show you a couple of things. The sidebar down here contains different views like the Explorer to assist you while working on your project. Okay, so down here, if we have an error, if I would do something like this, delete, no, go away, delete this one, and say we have 2 errors, okay? So let's undo this. Then, so from this is the sidebar, but not the entire thing, because this one here is the status bar. Now, the status bar informs you about the open project and files that you edit. For example, here within our the BW file, which is for black and white, I'm on the 25th line. As you can see here, 25th line, and I'm on the first column. Now, if I would hit a space, then this should change to 2. Okay, and so far and so on. Now, it also tells me that I am in a SCSS language. If I click here, you can see auto detected, and yeah, you could also change it. I wouldn't suggest it because the code editor right now detects that, hey, this is CSS, and it also SCSS, and it also validates it. Because if I would now go into a JavaScript file, you see in here, well, now it tells me that we are in a JavaScript file. And also, if I navigate along, you will see the lines changing and the column changing. If I select something, then it will tell me that I selected from line 21 to 33. So I'm ending on line 33. I selected, well, I have 13 selections. Now down here, we should also have a panel, but we'll talk about the panel a bit later on when we are also going to install our command or terminal, depending on Mac or PC. And next up, we're going to talk about this part right here. So let me close it up. And this entire thing on the left side is called the active bar. So as I said, it is located on the left-hand side, and this lets you switch between given instances, and this lets you switch between views and gives you additional context specification indicators, like the number of outgoing changes. For example, if we had git installed here. Now let's go over what it contains. So the active bar contains the Explorer, which I just clicked on. So if you click on the Explorer, it opens up. Now also a shortcut for opening and closing this would be Command B or Control B on the PC, Command B on the Mac. And we'll, as I said, we'll go over shortcuts a bit later on. Now next up is the search, then comes the source control, then comes a debugger, and down here we have our extensions, which will have a few separate parts talking only about extensions. Down here we have something new, account, which you can log in with your Microsoft account, and down here we have our manage. Well, the manage panel is not the settings panel, because if you click on manage, you will see settings and keyboard shortcuts and so far and so on. So this is not the settings panel, it's just the manage panel, and from here we can, well, go into separate things. Also, we can open up one of the most important parts of Visual Studio Code, the command palette. Now within here we can search for almost everything. Even if I type in settings, search for settings, not this one, so command palette, and this will open up everything that has settings in it, okay? So it searches in our entire Visual Studio Code, also in our projects. Okay, so I think that's pretty much it for the basic UI overview. Okay, so now that we know where and what is, let's take a look at how can we create, open, edit, and delete files and folders from a project. Now, everything in Visual Studio Code is actually, it needs to be stored in a folder. So let's go up here, and either we have our welcome bar and create a new folder, and if we click on it, we'll be asked where to create a folder. Let's choose a desktop, and let's say new folder, we'll just call it first project. Now we need to click on open, and now we are in a project. And when we want to open our project, let's also close this welcome bar. When we want to open our project, we go to the left side and we'll click on the Explorer. And this is where our files and folders can be created. Now we created a folder called first project, as you can remember. Now we can create a new folder within it. Let's call it HTML folder, and another folder, and we'll call it, now take care, if I'm in this folder and click on new folder, it will create a new folder within this folder. If I want to be outside the folder, then I click outside of this folder, and now I can create here a CSS folder. Now if I want to create something within this CSS folder, I'll just click on it, and let's say images for the CSS. And so far and so on, we can go through the folders. Now if we want to create a file, let's go into our HTML file, and let's say we create a index.html, and these extensions here are important because they will create exactly the file with the exact extension as wished to be created. For example, I could simply create a text.txt file, and I would have a text file. Or I could create an Excel file. I could create a whatever file I wish. As long as it is created within here, it will also be created within your computer, Mac or PC. Now, we can also modify or change files. For example, on a Mac, you will go over the file and just hit enter. And now you could change this to, let's say, some text. Hit enter and it is changed. But on the PC, you will need to click on the F2. So if you hit F2, you can change the project, the file's name or folder's name. Now when we want to open a file, we just click on it. And actually let me go in here in our CSS folder and create a new file. And this time I'm going to use Command N to create a new file. Now as you can see, this is just a undefined -1 file. And well, if I want to type CSS in it, let's say body and background color, just color and red. It has no IntelliSense and it doesn't do anything. It doesn't know what it is. Also down here you can see it's plain text. So we need to save this. So if I would hit save, now it asks me where I wish to create this new file. So within my first project, I could go within it and create it within our CSS folder, and let's call it style.css. Okay, so now I'm in a CSS file, and if I would now type in body and say color and red, and if you take a look down here, you can see it recognizes that this is a CSS file now. Okay, so now how can we delete a file? Well, the most easiest way is right click and delete. There's also a shortcut. Let's delete this text file. On a PC, it's just the delete button on your keyboard, but as you saw on a Mac, it's the command and backspace. So I would hit command backspace and I would ask me if I wish to move this to the trash can, and yes I wish, and it's gone. We could also delete folders. Let's delete the HTML folder, delete completely, this is gone. And yeah, that's pretty much it for creating, opening, editing and deleting files. So now that we know how we can create, delete and modify files, how can we actually save them? Well, first step is going up to files, file, save file, and the file is saved. Any changes will be now saved. Or you can change the type of the file by saving it as something else. I can just come in here and changing this CSS to .js. This will be stupid because, well, this is not the JS format or JavaScript format. But hey, this still remained. Excellent. Because now I want to do something. Let's make another change here. Let's write something const body. And let me delete this because we're in a JavaScript and it's equal to document and so far and get element by ID. I told you to get it by ID. Now, when we close this up and we would actually select something in here, we could also hit Control or Command on the Mac. So Command on Mac, Control on the PC, Control Save, and it would be saved. Now, there's another feature. It's called autosave. If you go up to File and click on File and click on autosave, well, it will disappear. And first of all, when we change something and go down one line, you'll see the file is not changed. Actually, we also have an error. Let's say just some kind of tag, a div tag, and there will be something in our div tag. Now, if you make any changes here, color blue, have autosave on, it was saved, so it was checked. But I will now make another change without autosave, without having autosave, and as soon as I tapped enter, you will see up here a number 1, and this means that there is an unsaved file. Well, we can also do something else. We can go to our settings, so go down to the Manage tab, click on Settings, open up Settings, and type in here autosave. Because autosave also has a few settings. You can see now autosave is turned off. Now if we set autosave turned on, it has 3 separate settings. After a certain delay, which we can set here, these are milliseconds, okay? So this means each and every second the file will be saved. If I turn this up to 5, then it will take 5 seconds. So the program will wait 5 seconds and it will automatically save. Let's change this back to 1. And there are a couple of different settings also in here. We can also change it to on focus. And this will only save a file when focus moves out of the editor to a third-party file. Now the last feature on window change will save a file when the focus moves out of the windows of the Visual Studio Code window. Now there's a couple of recommendations. I would suggest to leave it on after the delay and 1 second if you're working with HTML and CSS. If you're working with JavaScript, I would recommend to only save when you actually save. So leave either the on focus change or on window change, or just manually save by clicking Ctrl or Command S. Because the problem is, as soon as you have an error, it will automatically save and refresh. You will see this when we install our server, and it will constantly update the page, and you don't want that, believe me. Okay, so that's pretty much it for saving. Now, although my native language is not English, and I think you can tell it by now, it never occurred to me that I could change Visual Studio Code language. So if you want to change the language that Visual Studio Code is displayed in, well, then you can go to Manage, then the command palette, and let's type in here Configure Display Language. Now, if you click on it, we have by default only one language installed, but we can install additional languages. So let's click on additional languages and let's see what we got here. So we got Chinese, we got Japanese, we got, I can just go through them. We got Spanish, we got Russian, hey, что это? Korean, Chinese again, French, we got German. Hey, they have also German, I didn't even know that. Das deutsche Sprachpaket bietet eine lokalisierte Benutzeroberfläche für Visual Studio Code. Oh yeah, I can also speak German. So Portuguese, then Italian, then Turkish, and hey, that's it. Hey, they don't have Romanian. That's odd. Well, nevertheless, these are the languages that you can change, or you need to install it, and it will change your Visual Studio Code completely to change it to the designated language. But hey, just a quick tip. Now, when you're working in larger projects, Visual Studio Code, as I said, is, well, it's just excellent for everything. But it is pretty good in creating for you an environment where you can go through your files. Let me explain it. For example, basic front-end web development. A totally vanilla HTML, CSS, and JavaScript web page. Usually, you will start off with a HTML. Now, when you have your HTML opened and also ready, or you're working on a specific location, you would do something like open up an HTML file, and then you would grab on, let's say, to the ID of main, header, the ID of header text from here, and so forth and so on, and start styling it. Well, here's where Visual Studio Code comes in hand, because you can split it up into windows. For example, up here, I can split it up into 2 windows, and if I click on it again, then I can split up into multiple windows, 3 windows, 4 windows, 5 windows, and let's not get nuts with it, but you get the idea. And well, what is this good for? If I click and remain on the side of the window, I can now go into my CSS and I could open up my CSS file. Now this is a different kind of project. This project is created using Sass. And this is just an example, but well, I would not use my CSS file. I would use, let's say, my main style CSS. And here's where I imported my main header. Actually, these are commented out. Main header, footer, responsive, black and white, images, and dark mode for the web page. Now, of course, this file only contains my imports. And if I want to navigate between these imports, let me also close up this HTML file. I can now do this to the left side, and on the right side, oh yeah, you could also drag and drop them. So let's say I want to remain with an HTML up there. I want to have my main CSS file, and let's split it horizontally. So we should go down here, and on the right side, I want to have my JS. So let's move this to the right completely. So this would be here. And let me split it up here. And yeah, we can also split it up into 3 parts. I wish to move you down here. So come on. There we go. So we have this split up into, you would all obviously need a much larger screen than I have here. Let's close this one up. So you would have your HTML here, you would have your style here, and then you would have your JavaScript on the right side. So let's say I want to do a quick style to the header. I would just grab on the header tag, do my styling in here, color red. And within here, I will wish to have a small functionality. So let's say, let's create a const, let's actually just grab onto it. Document, query selector. And I would grab onto the header tag. And I would just style it using a background color. And I will set it equal to something blue. Okay, I could do this. So I have all 3 of them opened, and I could jump through each of my files and see everything. Now this is extremely helpful when working on frameworks. You could obviously go nuts with it and open up 1,000 files, but that's not pretty practical. And the last thing I want to show you is that you could actually open up multiple instances of Visual Studio Code. So if you go up to File, and you have here New File, but we don't want to do a new file, we want to do a new window. And if I click on New Window, then it will open up a completely blank page or a completely blank Visual Studio Code. So here we can start from scratch, have a completely new project open. Okay, so I think that's basically it for splitting up and working with multiple instances. Now that we're already here, let me show you a couple of other cool features of Visual Studio Code. One of the most coolest features is the minimap. On the right side, you will see this compressed code. And you can navigate through it by just holding down your click and scrolling up and down. Now, why is this useful? Let me actually close this up, all of these files, close up the style. If I have an error, for example, let me just delete some kind of a tag. So H3 should have an opening and closing tag, and the closing tag is gone. Okay. Now theoretically, I would have an error here. But actually, let me open up a CSS file. You can see the error is much better, and there's a lot more CSS. So let's say we delete this curly bracket. It's deleted. And you will see that the next ID of contact has a red squirrely line under it. Now if you take a look in our minimap, you will see, hey, we have an error there. And also if I scroll up and down, here on the right side, you also see an error. If I click on this one, it will throw me down to this error. Now let's also take a look at a few settings. Let me put back this curly braces. Let's go into settings. And let's type in mini map. Now the minimap, and actually let me drag this to the right side, and let's take a look at the minimap. So mini map again. So what can we do in our settings? Well, there's not a lot we can do, but one of the most important features is we could specify the maximum column. So if I would just reduce this from 120 to 20, you can see it shrinks down, but I don't know. This is not that useful. So let's go back to 120. And there are a couple of settings within here, but I wouldn't change them if I were you. You can increase the size a bit, but I would just leave it as it is. But what I would change, let me set this back to 1, is the word wrap. So what is this word wrap? Let me first of all, let me put the settings down here. So we have our settings down here, and we can see something cool within our word wrap. And especially in HTML, because HTML can get long, and also JavaScript can get a bit longer. So let's say we have here somewhere, create a paragraph tag and a lorem ipsum. Okay, But when I'm creating this line, I would say it should have 300 words. And check this out. You see how long this line got? 300 words on one line. Now I could, let me just Control Z, do, for example, 20 words. No, let's do 10 words. Let's see how long this is. Lorem 10. Hey, 110 words. So let's do lorem 10. And there we go, we have 10 words. If I would do lorem 15, well, the space is no longer sufficient enough. So we can do something in our settings. Let's drag up our settings bar here. Let's type in here word wrap. Okay, and it is turned off by default. Now, let me just turn it on. Okay, let's save it. And let's go down to my lorem. Let's hit lorem 150 now. So this is what the word wrap does. It will wrap the words until it reaches this line right here. I know that you can't see it, but there is a line between the minimap and where the editor ends. And even if I would do something like this, so let's drag the settings to the right side, you see the word wrap changes now. Now this will not change how your code looks, or for example, if I've had text within here, actually this is text, how this will look in your web page. This only changes how this looks in your editor, because you want to, I can actually show you this right here. If I would stretch this to the side, so let me go to, hey, this is why the minimap is so cool. So navigate the minimap back to my lorem ipsum, and let's stretch this to the right side. Okay, now you can also limit it by word wrap column. Let's change this to, let's say, 30, and it would only wrap to column of 30 words, but let me change it to 5. Okay, so this would be more obvious. Now, a couple of things I wanted to also show you is the zoom. Now, I can zoom in and out by holding down Command or Control and use the plus and minus. So minus, it will zoom everything out, but also take a look at the icons. They're also zooming out, so they're also shrinking down. Now, there's another way we could do that if we want to change on the font size. Now, for this, we will go back to our settings and type in font size. And right now, the font size is set to 12 pixels. So let's increase it to 16 pixels. Hit save. As you can see, on the left side, everything remained as it was, but the font size changed now. Now, if I would change this to, let's say, 20, this would be enormous. Well, check it out. I don't know if you would like to code this way, but I wouldn't. So let's change this back to, let's say, 14. See how this looks. Now you could also increase your line height. So if I want to have more space between my lines, let's say 1, 2, 20, 30, and so far and so on. So let's leave it at 0, which is the default. And I would suggest that you just customize this as you like. A well-performing program also needs to be updated. That is why Visual Studio Code has constant new updates. But now, depending on the version you have, they can be more or less often. When you get a new update, usually there is a small sign, like here on your Manage button, down in the bottom left corner. After you click on it, you will see that Restart to Update is now active. You have one update that already has done its job. Now, normally Visual Studio Code needs to be restarted in order for the updates to be installed, because the updates are downloaded automatically. Now, you could also go into Settings and search for Updates. And by default, you will see updates are downloaded. And to also check for updates automatically, you can change this to none, manually, start, and so far and so on. But I would suggest leaving it at the default settings. Now, as I said, if you want an update to be executed, you just press on Restart Updates, and this will restart all of your Visual Studio instances. So if I would open up a new Visual Studio instance, So now we have two opened up. And let's click on restart and update. You'll see that all of the instances will be now restarted. So this, I believe this was the second one. But if, for example, you want to check if you're in the current version of Visual Studio Code, then you can go to Visual Studio Code website and they will always display up here the current version that they're on. Momentarily, that would be version 1.49. Now, so if you want to check if there's a new update available, then you would go down here to the Manage tab, click on the Manage tab, and click on Check for Updates. And if you get there are currently no updates available, it means that you are on the correct version. But you could also check the version of your Visual Studio Code. So you can check your Visual Studio Code version by going to Code Insider, About Visual Studio Code Insider, and then you will get your version. This will be on a Mac. On a PC, you just go to Help, then within here you will have your About, and then click on it and you will also see your version. Now, although IntelliSense is generally integrated in Visual Studio Code, it is a really general term. IntelliSense is a term for a variety of code editing features, including code compilation, parameter info, quick info, and member lists. IntelliSense features are sometimes called by other names such as code compilation, context assist, and code hinting. Now let me give you an example. So let's just create a simple app.js file, a simple JavaScript file. And if I would target the document and I would hit dot, now this is IntelliSense. IntelliSense will now ask me, so what do you want to do? Do you want to get an animation, get an element by ID, get an element by class name, or get elements? Or maybe you want to grab a query selector. Now let's say we will add an event listener to the document. As you can see here, this sign is for a function. And also if I would go here and click on it, then it would tell me, hey, this is a method. If you use this, then you would add to the document a event listener. And actually, let's add one. And now open and close parentheses. And now it will tell me that, well, first of all, you need a type. So what do you want to listen to? Do you want to listen to a full screen error, or there are actually 86 event listeners? So let's listen for a click. Let's go in here and type in click. And again, IntelliSense knows, hey, he's looking for a click. Now, let's select this click. Now it says, okay, you selected the type of click, and it will listen to this from the document, and the event will be triggered by a mouse event. Now it also has a second step. We go down here, and actually let me type in a comma. The second step will be that you should insert now a callback function. So if I would type in here now function, open and close parentheses, and now I could add something. For example, if I would now type in console and now dot, it will now ask me again. So what do you want to do with the console? Do you want to clear it? Do you want to debug it? I just want to log it. Okay, so this is also a method. It will tell me console.log data any type. And if I would go in here and type in, hey, this takes in a string or anything actually. And I will type in here, hello world, and then close it up. And now I will go over console, for example. It will show me, hey, variable console. Now let's go to the document and actually to the event listener. If we hover over our event listener, IntelliSense will tell us this is a method. It targets the document. It has a click event, so type click, and then it has a callback function. You can see this entire thing, this .document event mouse, is actually in an arrow function. Any option, boolean. So if it's true or false, hey, stay here. And then we will have all the explanation. And actually, if I would go on this and hold down Command or Control, you will see it underlined. Now, if I would click on this now, it will send me to the definition. It will send me in a file which is called lib.dom.d.ts. This is a TypeScript file. It will now send me to the exact definition: event listener, key, document, event map, so far and so on. And this is a really, so if we use our minimap here, this is, I believe, 20,000 something lines of code. Whoa, immense. Okay, so I hope you get IntelliSense and also the real power of it and how useful it can be. Now let's talk about one of the most powerful features that comes with Visual Studio Code, Emmet. And Emmet is actually a thing on its own. If you do a Google search for Emmet, you could land on Emmet's page. As I said, Emmet is a thing on its own. And Emmet is just a set of plugins for text editors that allow for high-speed coding and editing HTML, XML, XSL, and other structured code formats via Context Assist. It also can edit. It also has a bit for CSS, but it's actually HTML where it really shines. The tools have been incorporated into several popular text editors, as well as some plugins developed by the Emmet team and others implemented independently. However, Emmet is primarily independent from any text editor, as the engine works directly with text rather than with any particular software. So let's just go a bit into this cheat sheet. Actually, it's already opened up here. And as you can see, you can do a lot of things with Emmet, and I will also show you a couple of them. So let's jump into a text editor again, and let me create a new file, a index.html. Okay, the first really important feature is just holding down Shift and the button 1, which just gives us this exclamation mark. And you can see here, Emmet abbreviation. And this abbreviation will generate us the HTML5 boilerplate, or this is actually the doc tag for HTML5, and this is the entire boilerplate. So 11 lines of code already typed out, ready for us to use. You just need to type in the file, the title of the web page, let's say my web page, and you're good to go. You can create your web page. You can link up your style sheet. So if I type in link, Emmet starts already recognizing all of the tags that start with li. So if I go down to link, it already shows me, hey, you will get, if you use this, a link tag with an href and a relevant style sheet. So if I press on this, then hey, I can already type in here my style.css. And it will link up my style.css. Now let's see what we can do with Emmet. So let's start with an h1. So if I type in h1, well, usually you should do open and close h1 tag, then a closing tag, backslash h1, and there's a tag. Okay. Now Emmet helps us with this. It has all the abbreviation for all of the tags. If I just type in here an h1, it will automatically give me an h1. Either I press now tab, it will give me the h1, or I press just enter, and there we go. I can type in title. Now I could also create an h6, so this goes until h6. We could do a paragraph tag, or we could do a div tag, or we could do a span tag, or we could do something more complicated like a input tag, or we could just do, let's say, a paragraph tag, and within here I would just type in lorem, and this would give me a Lorem Ipsum dummy text. Now I could also do 10 words from lorem. So lorem 10, and this would give me only 10 words, or I could do lorem 100, and this would give me a lorem 100 words. Now you could also do 300, it doesn't matter. But where really Emmet shines, you could also do a h1 with the ID of my ID. So if I hit enter, we'll see here what will happen. h1 with the ID of my ID and then something between it. And there we go, title. Now we could also do, actually let me leave this one in. Now we can also do classes. Let's do an h2.container, and this is how we do a class. You could also do div.container, or when we just use a hash myId, this will automatically give me a div tag. So if I only use an ID, or if I only use a .container, you can name it whatever you want. I could use my class here, and it will give me a div tag. So if you just start without using any tag, it will automatically give you a default content division tag. Now I could also do a second class within it. So let's say we have a container and dot again sub container, and hit enter, and this will give me two classes. Now we could also combine this with, let's say, a ID of my ID, then a dot of container, and another dot of subcontainer. And there we go. We'll have a ID and two classes within it. We could also do attributes. For example, I could have a anchor tag, and within here I would use now brackets, and this should be target blank. And if I hit enter, then I would get an anchor tag with an href and a target blank. Now we can also use inputs. So if I would just type in input, and then it will ask, hey, do you want an input with a button, a checkbox, a color? Because if I only use input, the normal input, it would give me the type of text. But if I would now say input and two dots, and I would now like to have a checkbox, and hit, whoa. So checkbox, and hit enter, then I would get a type of checkbox. Obviously, you could also do a radio button, input, and dot type radio. But you could also do multiple tags. So let's say we want to have two tags. We want to have a title, let me use a subtitle, so h2 plus a paragraph tag, so h2 plus a p. Then this will give me an h2 and underneath a paragraph tag. Now I could also do a h2 with the ID of subtitle, then plus a paragraph tag with a, let's say, a class of text. Now if I hit enter, then this will give me an h2 with an ID of subtitle and a paragraph tag with a class text. Now I could also include one tag into another tag. Now this is extremely helpful when we're using ordered or unordered list, because I could do, hey, within an unordered list, I want to have included, so greater than a list item. And if I hit enter, it will give me between our two UL tags one LI tag. And of course, we could also do UL with an ID of my list, and it should have a list item with an ID of my list item. And if I hit enter, I will get the unordered list with an ID and the list item with an ID. Now you would obviously want to have more than one list item, so you could go in here, Control C. I don't know if I showed you this, but if you're at the end of the line and you hit Control C or copy and go to the next line and paste, let me go to the next line, it will actually copy the entire line. So if you are at the end of the line, I could also do it with this input tag, so Control C or Command C, going down, Command V. Now, we don't want to do this. We could use Emmet to do ul, let's say with an ID of nav container. And then within this, we would like to have li with a class of nav items. And this we will times by 4. Let's see what happens. We'll get a unordered list with the ID of nav container and 4 list items. Now, if we want to get really radical with this, let's say we want to have a section, so a section tag, which will include a whole section, which will have the ID of aside. And within this section, we will have an unordered list with the ID of nav aside. And then this should contain, within parentheses, anchor tags which contain allies with the class of nav aside items. Then we'll go out of the parentheses, multiply this with 5, plus at the end we will add an input tag with a type of checkbox, and the checkbox will have an attribute of checked. Now check this out. If I hit enter, boom, blown away. A section, opening and closing tag with an ID of aside, a unordered list within it with the ID of nav aside. It has 5 items, each of them in an anchor tag with a list item, and at the end of this we have a input tag with a checkbox and the attribute of checked within it. So amazing, just amazing. Now we could also include text within it. So let me go down here and let's say h1, actually h2, we already have our h2 with an ID of subtitle again. And now within camel case, we're typing in title, actually 2 T's. And after that, we want to have, so a plus a h3 with a subtitle class this time. And then here also a text of subtitle. And after that, we want to have a paragraph tag. So let's go outside of this. Whoa, not there. We want to have a paragraph tag. And this should have a lorem 100. And this we will multiply times 3. Now let's see what happens. The only problem with this is that we're not getting our 100 lorem ipsums, but we can fix this. We'll select the first one, then Command D, and actually I need to select from here. So lorem M300, let's say, and if I hit enter, it will give me, well, 300 words. 3 paragraph tags with lorem 300. Okay, so let's go down here. But this would always obviously come more in use when we have, for example, list item with my list. And within this, we'll include our list items with a class of my list items. And then we will have a text within it of list item, and we will multiply this, let's say, times 5. Now let's hit enter. Now we got for each of them a list item, a text within it. But now let's say we want to also have some numbers within it. So how can we achieve this? We would do the same thing again. So ul with ID of my list. Then it will include our list items with the class of my list items. Then we will have our list items tags. So list item space and then a $, and this will mean a variable. Now when I multiply this with, let's say, 5, and I hit enter, it will add a number to each of it. It's kind of a loop and adding 1 to each of them. Now you could obviously also do this with the IDs and the classes. So let me do UL again with my list, and then it will have our list items. And now I will start with my list ID and dash and a $. Then I will have a class of my list item ID dash $. You don't have to do the dash. You could also actually do it this way so you can see the difference. Then we could have the text of list item and $, within it. So I would multiply this, let's say now times 7, and if I hit enter, I will get our IDs 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Here also for the classes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and also for the text 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, so I think that's pretty much it for Emmet. Last thing I wanted to show you is actually within CSS. So let's say we take our body. You could, well, for example, we want to do a margin of 2 pixels. It doesn't matter. Okay, now you could do something like M, and 2. And now for the 2, I could do 2 pixels. Hit enter, I will get 2 pixels. I could do a padding for P and 2 rem, let's say. Now I could also do a height of just the H and then 20%. This will also give me a height. Then I could do a width. So W, and let's say we want a 100 viewport widths. Or I could also do this with height. So height 100 and viewport heights. Then you could also use it for displaying. So I would hit D, then display it as, let's say, a grid. So G, this would display everything as grid. Then D, display again as F, as flex. So DF flex. Then we could do D, display none, DN, D block, DB, and so far and so on. You could use it also for colors. Let's say C, and I would use a hashtag of FFF. Now I would get a white color, and I could use BG for background and do a hash of 333, let's say dark color. Okay, yeah, well, that's pretty much it for Emmet. As I said, it is extremely powerful. You could also check out this entire cheat sheet that we have here. It has a lot of things in it. It is amazing. Okay, so I think that's pretty much it for Emmet. If you're ever lost in Visual Studio Code and you want to be found, then don't worry, there are options for it. Let's say we have this aside ID, and we want to check if this aside is anywhere else in Visual Studio Code. Now, especially we are now in our HTML file, so especially in this HTML file, we will hold down Command Alt Control F on PC, and the find option will appear. Now this will find the aside word in each and every line of our code. For example, even if in our minimap, it will show us where it is. And now we can even jump through it if we hold down our arrow keys. Let's say to the next word, and the next word, and the next word, and so far and so on. Now, we just searched for match case, but we could also search for match whole word. And I would deselect match whole word, it would only find it here. Now, if I want to find nav aside and match only the case, it will find it in nav aside items also. But if I would unclick this and click match whole word, it will only find it within here. Now, okay, we found it. And let's also find the word. And let's say we want to change this. It will no longer be aside, but it would be the main navigation. So we only want to change this aside from the nav. And let's find it. So it finds it here, and we want to replace it with something. So if we click on this arrow, then we could also replace. Now we could replace either one item. So let's say we would replace this with something else, body. I don't know why. Now I could replace this in one instance, or I could replace this in all the instances that it was found in. So if I click on this, so if you click on this one, then it will replace it all over the place. Now let's go back. Let's type of Control Z, which is undone, and let's see, can we find something in our entire in all of our documents? Now this is a pretty reoccurring real life scenario. Let's say we have an ID and this ID will change for some reason whatsoever, or this class, nav item class. Now let's say we have this nav item class also in our CSS, and we said nav, the class of nav item, should have a list style none, and it should also have a color red, whatever. Just making up some things here. And okay, so we have it here. And also in our JavaScript, we created a const for list items, and we assigned it to the document get elements by, actually let's use query selector. Query selector, and we selected, we need query selector all, actually we're selecting all of the classes, and we just selected all of our nav aside items. Okay, so, and somewhere in the, we talk with our developers, with our colleagues, and they say, hey, we just changed this. Nav aside item is now nav rainbow item something something. And say, whoa, I have it in like a million lines of code, so what can I do? Well, we will take this nav aside item, we will go in here, we will search now, paste it in, and this will find it in the app.js, so in the JS file, we'll find it one time. It will find it in a HTML file 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times, and it will find it in the CSS file. Now we could replace it. We could say this is a nav, main nav. Let's call it main nav. So you can see it also shows you, let me actually make this a bit larger, that the nav aside item will be now replaced with main aside. Now I could choose to replace it here, nav.js. So if I click on this one, this was replaced. I could also say I don't want it to be replaced in the CSS file. So if I click on dismiss, it will not be replaced. Or I could just click up here and replace all. And if I click on this, it will be replaced in all of my files. So if I search now for main nav in our HTML, in our CSS, and in our JavaScript, it was replaced. Okay, so I think that's pretty much it for find and replace. You cannot get lost. You cannot get lost. Now, if you say that a code editor is great, we should also be able to navigate through it. Now, Visual Studio Code has a high productivity code editor, which, when combined with a programming language service, gives you the power of an IDE and the speed of a text editor. So in the next couple of minutes, I'm going to show you how we can navigate through the code. Now, first of all, bracket matching. If we go and click on this H1, you'll see it will highlight the next H1, so the closing tag. Also, if I go on the input tag, it will only highlight me, well, this greater than sign. But if we go into a JavaScript file, and I would do it in here, let's say another function, and this will have something within it, and then this, and I should also close it up. Let's give this a name of my function. Okay, now if I would click on the first bracket, it would match up with this bracket. If I would click on the second bracket, then it would match up with this one. And so far so on. If I would do here an if statement, and then do the brackets within it, and then do an else statement, and then do another brackets within it. I should also have something, let's say boolean or true. If something is true, let's put this one down and this one down. If something is true, then something should happen. If something, let's say console log, so just an abbreviation. No, not that one. So console log something, and if it's not true, that it should console log something else. And let's hit save, and we'll see that this bracket will match up with this one. Even if I go out here, this one, it will show me the closing bracket. Now we have later on a really neat extension for this, so we don't need this, but yes, we do need this. We do need to see how they match up. But also, it is exceptionally good in code selecting. Now, let's say, yeah, this is also working here. So I have these two console logs, these three console logs. Now, after the console, we have the log. And if I would change this to console.error, then I would change the first one. But let's say I want to change all three of them. Now you can see they're all highlighted. With the first one selected with a double click, I can now press Ctrl D and select all three of them. And now I could change this to error. But let's go back into our HTML. Now, how can we select things? Well, you saw if I click somewhere within here, then I would have my M. If I drag over it, then this is selected. I could now right click, copy, go in here, paste, or cut. But what if I want to move without my mouse? What if I want to be really quick? Also, if I double click something, it will select the whole word, the entire word. Now within here, container, I could jump through them using Ctrl D. But what if I want to be here? What if I'm here and jump through these words? Now if I would hold down Command and arrow right, this will jump to the end. Okay, so let's try this again. For example, I go into this div tag. I'm right at the beginning. I hold down Command, or on the PC, the Control button, or just Control key. Hit the right arrow key. It would jump to the end of this line. Now, if I'm in here and hold down the Control key, it will also jump to the end of the line. Now, if I would be in here and hold down Shift, then it will select one letter at a time, and also arrow keys. Now if I would hold down Command, Shift and the arrow key, it will select the entire line. If I would hold down Control on the Mac, Control, Shift and the arrow keys, it will select the entire word and the next word exactly where it breaks up. So let me show you this at this class. So Control, Shift, select the word class, then it jumps to the entire next selection. And also if I keep on selecting, it will select the entire line. Now if I would hold down now Command and use the up and down keys, this will either bring me to the start or the end of my entire code. If I hold down Shift, then this would start selecting line by line. If I press down on the down arrows, then this will deselect it. Now, if I'm in this LI list and hold down Option and arrow up, now take a look at this numeration right here. So we have the ID of 7. Now I could move it around, okay, with the up and down keys. If I hold down Option and go right, this will jump through each and every word. Okay, so as soon as I have a white space or it's something ends, it will jump through it. Now, if I hold down Option and Shift and use arrow left, and it will select one word, then the other word, then the next one, the next one, the next one. So I can select words within this. So let's say I'm here and let's say we want to hold down Option, Shift, right one time. This is select all of my IDs, my list IDs. Now I would hold Command D, select the second one, the third one, and let's change this to text. It will change all three of them. Now I can also navigate within this. Let's change all 1, 2, 3s to 9, let's say. Now up here we could also navigate through this by holding down Control Tab, and this will bring me to the file that I wish to, well, as soon as I let go, this will bring me to the CSS file. Now hold down Command and let's release on the JavaScript file the Command key, and we will go to the next file. Now another cool thing within our navigator are breadcrumbs. The breadcrumbs are up here. Okay, so if I'm in the code, let's say I'm in the code here, then, well, I'm at the start of the code. But if I would go now from the document in the event listener, in the click, in the function, so in the callback function, then it will tell me that I'm in the callback function. You can see actually here's the callback function. Now if I would go deeper in this, let's say I'm in my function, and I could actually navigate from this back to the callback function. Well, let's go even more deeper. Let me put this if statement and this console log. Let me cut this out and put it in my function. I do have an error here. So I'm in my function now, and I could go all the way up to the document. Okay, and this will send me up to where the callback function actually starts. And also in CSS, well, it's not that useful, but if I'm in my body, now it will tell me that, well, the body, this is more useful in SAS when we're nesting things, because in SAS you could do something like body, and within the body, all of the H2s do something, color, something, free, and hey, we also have within our body UL, and I want in this UL of the li tags to have then another color, and so far and so on. And with breadcrumbs, you could go, then you could see this level. Okay, so body, div, body, you could go actually up. Okay, let me actually delete this because this is nonsense code in CSS. And yeah, that's pretty much it for navigating the code. Now, I would say that one of the most powerful features of Visual Studio Code is extensions. And the best part about it is that they are free. They're absolutely free. And I cannot imagine myself living without these extensions. Now, there are a lot of extensions out there. I'm just going to summarize what I think, in my opinion, are the best of them. And also, this will not make you a better developer, but it would make a much quicker developer. So this being said, I would categorize extensions into 3 categories. Once again, this is just my personal opinion. Now, there are essential extensions, those extensions that I use in my daily life as a developer, and I really cannot live without them. Now, there are also optional extensions or cosmetic extensions. I could live without them, but I don't need them. And then there are the environmental extensions. These are programming environment and framework specific. Now, you don't need them if you are not using some specific environments, like for example, if you're only working in a React environment or Angular or Vue, or using specific frameworks like Bootstrap and so far and so on. Now, if we take a look at the essential extensions, or in my opinion, the extensions that actually each front-end developer really needs in Visual Studio Code, then this would be Live Server, because I cannot imagine myself constantly clicking on a Google or a Firefox icon in order to open up my web page. Then the debugger for Chrome or Firefox, and let's be honest, nobody uses Edge, so let's just forget about it. Also HTML and CSS support. Then the JavaScript ES6 code snippets, we will have a separate video on code snippets. Then the terminal, although you do have the integrated terminal, but I'm going to show you this. Now, bracket pair colorize is also an exceptional good extension. It will colorize all of your parentheses, square parentheses, and brackets. Code spell check, especially for me. I'm making a lot of spell checks, so woo! Yep, I definitely need that. And then prettier, well, it just makes your code pretty. Then we will also have the optional extensions. Now, as you can see, there are a lot of them, which in my opinion, you could or could not use, and especially if you're a beginner developer, you may need some of them. Now, advanced new file is, well, we'll take a look at this. It's a pretty good extension, but you don't really need it. Auto name tags is also a great extension, but, well, you kind of write the tag and then you leave it as it is. It doesn't really matter. Indent Rainbow is also an exceptionally good extension. Better comments. Well, the problem with better comments, and I will also show you this, is if someone else gets your code and he does not have the extension installed, then he will not see these comments. CSS Peak, also great extension. Pull code. Hey, if you're on social media, then thumbs up. Also, I am. So yeah, it's pretty useful. Markdown PDF, if you're writing a book. Editor config for Visual Studio Code. This would just make your Visual Studio Code have the same configuration on each device you have. And FaunaDB if you're using databases, but I wanted to have it in there. Now, environmental specific extensions. Well, as I said, it depends. We will take a look, and we'll also have a separate video on each of them, or on some of them. IntelliSense for CSS class name. This is specific if you're working with something like Bootstrap. You need to see those classes for the HTML tags. Live share, also great when you're working in groups. Live Sass compiler, only if you're using Sass. We will also have a separate video on Live Sass compiler, but once again, only if you're using Sass. If you're writing only regular CSS, which I could not imagine if after 1 year of writing CSS, you're still writing regular CSS, but it could happen. Now, REST client is exceptionally good for APIs. We also have a separate video on that one. And no snippets. Well, if you're working in Node, import cost, this will show you how much space your JavaScript imports are taking up. React Native tools, if you're working in React Native environment. And also ES7, React, Redux, GraphQL, React Native, snippets. These are exceptionally good when you're working in React. Okay, guys, so this being said, let's take a look at some of them. Okay, so let's take a look at what I consider to be essential extensions in Visual Studio Code. Now, your extensions tab is right here on the left side. Now, click on it, and the first extension we're going to take a look at is Live Server. As I said, this is one of the most used extensions out there. If you take a look at it, it has over 7,600,000 downloads. Amazing. Just amazing. So let's click on install. And after you have it installed, let's create a, let's open a file, a folder. Let's go to my desktop and just create a folder. New folder, something, something. Let's open it. Doesn't matter, but I also want to create a new index.html. Now, how do we use Visual Studio Code? First of all, let's create something in here. Let's create a boilerplate, HTML5 boilerplate, and let's create here a header with a class of, let's say, title, and within here I'm going to give it a style of not display, font size, let's say 5 rem. Okay, and for the title we're going to just type in here hello world. Hello world. Okay, now let's hit save, Control S, and a live server should be installed now. Live server, there we have it. So let's go into our HTML. Let's right click and open with live server is one option. Command L is also an option, or Command O. Live server will start. Let's actually drag and drop this because it opened up on another window. Let me put it in here. And there we go. Our web page is opened, and it's opened up on a local host on a port 5500. They can also change this on which port you want to open it up, but I would suggest leaving it as it is. Now we could also stop live server. So another way of opening this up, let me create a new tab. It's also going to open up in a new tab. You could also open it up by holding down Command Shift or Control Shift, and then open up the command palette, so Control P, and then type in live server. So we have now a couple of options: change live server workspace, open live server. So we're going to open this one again up with live server, or we can stop live server. Now let's just open it up again, and it can open up another tag. And if I would change here something, let's say hello world 1, you can see it automatically changes after I hit save. And as I said, for stopping live server, you could either go down here. You also see here, you will have your port, and it says click to stop live server. And if I click stop and change this. So let's say 2 and hit save. Well, nothing happens because I stopped live server. If I want to go live again, just click go live. Well, it will open up in another tab. I can just close this too. And this is the old one, and here's the new one. Now later on, you are going to use debug if you're working in JavaScript. So let's type in debugger. And as I said, there are two debuggers that I would recommend. One of them being debugger for Google Chrome, and the other one for Mozilla Firefox if you're working for, where are you? There you are. If you're working in Mozilla Firefox. Now, both of them are great. You can also see here 737,000 downloads and 6,500,000 downloads, because Google Chrome is just the preferred browser for web developers. That's just that's the way it is. Now, another great extension will be, and we could also install it. So let me just install it, have it in there. And now let's search for HTML and CSS support. Now, if you scroll down here, you see features, classes, attributes compilation, ID attributes compilation, suggests Zen coding compilation, classes and ID scans workspace folder for CSS and SCSS files, supports remote CSS files, uses Visual Studio Code CSS language services, supported languages HTML, blah, blah, Java, PHP, remote style. Yeah, you need this. You just need this. So let's install this also. Now, I cannot imagine you only working in HTML and CSS. You sometimes sooner or later you will use JavaScript. So let's search for JavaScript. So not Java, JavaScript, ES6 code snippets. Now this is really important because without this, let's see, it supports languages, JavaScript, TypeScript, JavaScript, React, TypeScript, React. You also get hit down here a few examples. We have it. So for example, console log, yeah. For example, this one. I will also have a different video on snippets, but just remember, snippets are abbreviations of code. And also, let me give you an example of this. So let's go back into the files. Let's create a app.js. And we didn't install it, did we? No, we didn't install it. So I don't have it installed, but I'm going to go into my body, and above the body into my HTML file, going to now link up my JavaScript files, app.js, hit save. Now let's go back into our JavaScript file, and in our browser we'll inspect. So click on inspect or F12. You'll open up your inspector tool right here, and we're going to go into the console. Now, you know, I can type in here console.log, and let's log here a string of hi. So if I hit enter, okay, hi is logged, and we can also log it for console.log, and we can log here hello. Okay, so if I close this up, hit save, and also we have our live server running. This is very important. So if you don't have it running, please start it. Now JavaScript communicates with the DOM, that well, with the console, that hey, you should log hello world. Now we don't need to type out console log. We could use CLG. We don't have it right now, but after we install our snippets, so let's go in here and install this one. Okay, so they should be installed now. Now if I click CLG, so type in CLG, displays a message in console log. So there's a message in console log, JavaScript snippets. So instead of typing in console.log, I could now just type in CLG, hit enter, and there we go, I have a console log. And I can now type in here Norbert, there we go, hit save, and hey, Norbert is now logged. Okay, so this is how snippet works. Now, although we already have it in Visual Studio Code, an extension was the terminal. If I type in here terminal, now without installing it, I will show you that if you control and backticks on Mac, it will open up the terminal. Now I'm using Bash, but normally you would use a CNG. I'll show you this a bit later on, but you could also install the terminal, and well, yeah, if you don't have it, you can install it. It could happen that you don't have it. Now, but one of my favorite extensions, this is more a visual extension, but it helps me out a lot, is bracket pair colorizer. So let's search for bracket pair colorizer. Hey, stay there. Now what this does, let me also install it. It colorizes your parentheses, your square brackets, your camel cases, and it's extremely helpful. Let's go into another JavaScript file, and let's say we create a function, just has a name. Okay, we have here parentheses. Let's go in here and let's say if, and we create another parenthesis. And I always see that these two parentheses are different. Let me uninstall bracket pair colorizer. So let's go in here, uninstall, go back into our thing, and let's hit save again. I think this still works. Reload is required. Wait just a second. Okay, now, we don't have any colors in our brackets. Now, after installing it, is it already gone? Yep. Let's search for it again. So, bracket, pair colorizer. Let's hit install. Let's go back into our app, and there we go. Now we have our bracket. So, if something, then do something, and console log, CLG, and else if, do something else, and else again do something else. Now within here I could have now another parenthesis and say something like return. This is gibberish, but you can see the brackets are colorized differently. Also, if I would have an array, so let's create a let array is equal to, let's say, actually I don't want to create an array, but I'm just going to type in more and more brackets. You can see the color of the rainbow. Yeah, yep, this is extremely useful. So I cannot imagine myself working without this. And speaking of working without this, code spell check. And I think, as you already saw in the videos, I am an extremely bad speller. So yeah, need this. Now what this does is, for example, return. I should have typed in, you could now type in something like, for example, else. Now if this just means it's not a valid code, but it also has a red underline. So let me create a const. So const, and let's call it apple. Now this is the way we spell apple, okay? Let me create a let apple just initiated. This is the way we spell apple. If I would delete a P, now it has this blue squirrely. That if I go and hover over it, then quick fix will appear. If you click on quick fix, it will give you also, hey, there we go, apple. Okay, so this is how code spell check works. And one of the last, for at least for me, extensions out there is prettier. Because I'm pretty. No, not because I'm pretty, but it makes your code prettier. And what this does, so there we go, prettier. Don't want to install it right now. Let's go into a HTML file, and yeah, let's do. Actually, this is also a really good example of h2, no, ul, and I want to have here li, and let me actually create 3 li's. So li times 3, hit enter, and let's do something else. Let's create a li with a text within it of item, and let's multiply this times 3. Okay, so we have 3 items. Now if I click on save, we have syntax error and will not run. So let me comment this part out. Let me actually delete this. Oh, we're not live. Okay, let's click on live, go live again. And hey, reload. I know you don't work. And go live from here. You also always need to go live from your HTML file. There we go, there's our HTML file, and we have our 3 items within it. And I also need to zoom in a bit. Whatever, doesn't matter. But you can see how this is indented. And like you normally would do something like space, and you should go here, and you should go down here, and you should go with a tab here. Now there's a simpler way of doing this. So let me hit Control Z. I actually do need you. Hey, let's do 5 of this. Now if we install Prettier now, and also go into our settings. So let's click here on prettier settings. There's also an option on formatting on save. So you need to click this. If you click the format on save file, and let's go back into our HTML. If I now hit save, so Control S, hey, aren't you working file? Okay, so now after installing Prettier and you hit save, you'll see it will automatically organize it for you. So it will automatically indent it. Also, let's open up a JavaScript file and let's actually close this. It also closes your tags. So for example, if I do something like, actually let me create this let again here. I will delete this, so this would be an error. If I want to execute it, this will lead an error because it's open. I didn't close the argument. But if I hit just save, this will close it for me and also push it one up, so I can't leave something like open space. If I hit save, you will see everything is deleted. Okay, so that's pretty much it for the essential tags. Now next up, we're going to take a look at optional extensions. Now, as I said, there are some preferred extensions that, in my opinion, I cannot live without, I cannot work without. But there are also a few extensions which are pretty good, but I can live without them. But before we do that, I would just like to mention that up until this point, I used the Visual Studio Code Insider Edition. But my preferred Visual Studio Code Edition is the stable build. So if you haven't already, please install all of your extensions that we already installed for essential extensions. And then you can move on. Okay, so with this being said, let's take a look at optional extensions. Now the first one would be Advanced File Save, or Advanced New File. Let's type in here Advanced New File. Now what this does, let me actually install it. First of all, I'm going to go into my keyboard settings. So let's hold down Ctrl+Shift+P. Let's open up our command palette and let's say keyboard shortcut reference. Now let's go down to our manage and let's go on keyboard shortcuts. And let's search for there we go. Advanced file. Advanced new file. Now, I would recommend, so if you want to create a new file, you would hold down Alt Command and N. And if you want to create a new file, then Command N. Now, I would recommend changing this to just double click on it, Command N. Now, check this out. There is on the right side, source, user, and default. The user will always override the default. So if I would go now and create a new file, so let me close all of this up. Let's hold down Command N, create a new file. You can see it now creates a file on user desktop on title folder, because this is the folder that we created. And now I can type in, so instead of having this just new file, I can now type in, let's say, this will be our CSS, actually our style.css file. Now enter, this will create a new style.css file for me. Okay, so that's it for this extension. Now next up, we're going to take a look at auto remain tags, and this is a pretty cool one. So let's go to a HTML file in our index.html, and let's go into our extension and let's search for auto rename tags. Now what this extension does after we install it, and this is pretty good for beginners. If you, for example, say, hey, I don't want this list to be a ordered list, a unordered list, but I want it to be a ordered list, before installing, now I need to uninstall it. Okay, let's uninstall it, go back into our HTML. Now if I want to change this opening and closing tag, I would need to do something like OL, it's reload is required. So let's click on reload, and now let's try this. So if I double click on it, it will highlight the next one, doesn't change both of them. Now if I want to change this, the first one OL, and then I would need to go down to the second one OL, and I would have a ordered list. You could also do something like select both of them, because if I select this and select the next one using Control D, then I would have both of them selected and change them into UL. But if you have the advanced, if we have our auto rename tags installed, then it would do something like, let's select I'm only going to select the first one, so only the beginning tag, and type in OL, and this would also edit my closing tag. So pretty awesome, isn't it? If I want to change the second li here into a paragraph tag, I would just select the first one, hit P, and it will change it. Also, if I would only click in it and say div, you see it's changing the next one. Well, it's not changing, it is just typing something in it, but it's editing both beginning and ending tags. Okay, so this is dumb. Well, let me change to div. Yo, okay, so that's it for this tag. Now next we're going to take a look at indent rainbow. That's a pretty cool one. So let's search for indent dash rainbow. So let's search for indent. What do we have it? Yeah, that is not switcher, indent rainbow. There we go. That's a pretty cool one. Let me show you what this does. Without it, you can see if I select something here, you see these dots? And if I would need to search, well, where does this end, on which line this is, could install now indent rainbow. And what this does is coloring your indentation. Okay, so now you see we have this orange, then green, then pink. And if I would create here another UL and some LIs times 7 within it, and save, and prettier would help me, or should help me. I actually need to go live. Now prettier is active. And now if I would hit save, go down, then all of them would be on the next column. You go here, you go here, and there we go. Now the next one will be better comments. Better comments. There we go. Normally if you would create a comment, and let me actually go into a JavaScript file. So let's see, function name, and this would do something. Okay, and the next function, this is not how a function looks. And let me copy this a couple of times. So this one, this one, this one, this one. Okay, so we have a couple of functions, and we will say that, hey, this function is actually, so create a comment, control /, and this automatically create a comment. Say this function is for something. Okay, and the next function, something is control C, control V for something else. And this would be then alert or caution. This would be attention, needs modification, something like that. Now with better comments, we can create different types of comments. So let me install this, and we'll see down here you have important, then decrypted, should this method be executed, to do, parameters. So let us try this out. So I'm going to move this one over here, and let's say this is a equal. So this is a normal comment. Then we could also have a multi-line comment. This is without installing this extension. So /**. There we go. There's our comment, and the first will be comments. Now let's go out of this. So when you have this multi-line comment, then you could do comments and first comment, second comment, and so forth and so on. So okay, so this would be a multi-line comment. Then now you would have this, so /, and then if you type in just a star, then this would change the color to a more lighter green. Let's say important. You can use them for everything, for anything you want, but just, you know, you can use this as an important comment. Now you could also do comment and exclamation mark, and this would turn it into a red comment. And let's say danger, needs mod. Then we could do something like question mark and is this working? Then we could also do a to-do list. So to do, we actually need to type in now to do, capitalized letters, and we don't need the star. Okay, and there we go. Something, then something else, and wait just a second, I could do now a /*/ multiply comment, and now we could, hey, I don't need you. And we can now type out our to-do list. Okay, now that's pretty much it for this extension. Now let's also take a look. As I said, you can use this, but someone else reads your code, he will not see this, I believe. If he doesn't have better comments installed, hey, you could then do a comment up here, install better comments extension to see my comments. Now the next up is also a pretty useful one, is CSS peaks. CSS peaks. Now what this does is it will let you pick classes for CSS. As an example down here shows, for class comments, okay, he hovers over it and it will see the CSS that was applied to it, and you can also jump to it. So let's go into our HTML. Let's first of all, now we do have a styles, or do we have one? Yep, I have here a style CSS. Okay, so let's link this up in our HTML. So let's go above the title, say link, and we're going to link up our style sheet. Okay, so let's hit save. Now let's go to our, we can close up our JS. Yeah, whatever, save it. And this one, let's go into our CSS. Now, do I have any classes? Okay, class title, there we go. Class title, let's copy our class title, let's target it in CSS dot class title, and let's say color red, padding left on, whatever, 2 rem, margin from right, 2 rem. This is just gibberish. Let's also add a font weight of 600. Okay, so now if I hit save and now go back into my HTML and I hover over this, hey, we didn't install it. Okay, so let's install it. So after we have it installed, and let's go back to our HTML. And now if I hover over my title class, let me also take that OL. So it's just a tag. Let's target it and let's say display inline, and let's also list style none. Okay, let's hit save. Let's go back into our HTML, and if I hover over our title, hold down Command and click on it, it will now bring me to our title in CSS. Okay, so for all of you social media users out there, there's another one. There's another great extension, Polar Code. Now let me show you this. Polar Code, which will take photos of your code. So let's install it first of all. Okay, now let's go and open up. You can use it in HTML, CSS, app.js, whatever. So you need to open the command palette. So Control-Shift-P, and let's type in here Polar Code to initiate it. Then you will take your code, copy it, go into the right hand side where Polar Code is opened, and paste it in. So Control-V, and there you go. The code is now pasted in. And if you click on this snapshot down here, it will create a PNG file, or you can change the JPEG, and it will save it. Let's say code, save it, and let me actually open it up. And hey, there we go. We have a small picture of our code, and we can, hey, this doesn't look that good. And you would have a picture of your code. And you can post it then to social media, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, whatever. Now, for those of you who like to create markdowns or write books or create courses like I do and tutorials, there's a great extension called Markdown PDF. And this will let you create markdowns from your code. So you can see this extension covers markdown files to PDF, HTML, PNG, and JPEG files. And if you scroll down, there's also, okay, so you need to create a markdown files, an MD file, and then start typing in there. And there are also a couple of great examples here how this works. Now I'm just going to mention a couple of extensions that I think they're also awesome. So for those of you who have immense codes, you can use a bookmarks extension. This will create bookmarks. Let me actually close all of this up. This will create bookmarks in your code. So if you have a really long code, there's an example down here. Okay, it will create small bookmarks, and you could also type something in there, a few comments. Now, another great extension would be Cloak. And this is especially good to hide your credentials. For example, hey, Cloak, there we go. To hide your credentials when you're streaming on Twitch, YouTube, or if you're doing a presentation. This will create an env file, and this will hide all of your credentials. Okay, so if you have this installed, you also see an example down here. It will hide all of your sensitive data. Now, the last one that I want to talk about, and as I said, there are a lot of the great ones out there, is FaunaDB. This is a database, and if you take a look in the code right here, if you take a look in the examples down here, it doesn't have that many downloads, but it's a pretty good one. You can work with databases. So if you're into databases, then this is a great extension for you. Okay, so that's pretty much it for the optional extensions. This next category of extensions is only useful if you're working in specific environments. So for example, if you're working in a React environment, Angular, a Vue, a backend node, it will also use for Vue and React and Angular node. But yeah, also if you're working with Sass, there are a few couple of extensions. And if you're using CSS frameworks, so let's start with those. Actually, that's one great extension for them. It's called IntelliSense for CSS. So license for CSS, and actually for CSS for HTML. For CSS class names in HTML. So this one right here. Now this is great when you're working with frameworks like Bootstrap or Materialize CSS, because it will give you all of the classes that are integrated there. So as soon as you have them linked up, you have your Bootstrap linked up, or you have it completely installed within your project, then you can just search for classes. And if you also have CSS Peak installed, then hey, that's a great combination. As you can see, it supports languages HTML, Razor, PHP, JavaScript, yada yada yada. Yeah, this is a really great one if you're working with frameworks. Now, next, if you're working in groups, which you will work sooner or later, then you have Live Share. Okay, this is a pretty good one, and we also have a separate video on this later on. But I just wanted to have it right for now in it. Also, Visual Studio Code now has this button right here, which is your account. And I will show you how this works a bit later on. And I will show you how this works in another video. But just know you can now work in teams, and this is also incorporated into Visual Studio Code. But if you don't want to use this, then use Live Share, and you can log in this with either your GitHub account. Okay, so it's kind of okay. So here down, okay, so down here is your entire documentation for it. Now, what I use extremely often is Live Sass compiler. Now, if you're using Sass, and after time you will need to use Sass because it's just writing regular CSS, it's a horror. This is how Live Sass compiler works. First of all, Sass, if you do not know, is also known as SCSS, and it stands for Sassy CSS, Sassy Cascading Style Sheet. And what this does is lets you write, so all of the rules that are valid in CSS are also valid in Sass. So let me just install this and give you a short example. Now, after you have it installed, now go into a folder, and let's create now a new folder called Sass. Within our Sass folder, we'll create a file, which we'll call, let me call it main.s CSS. Now you can use the extension Sass, and this uses, when you're writing it, no curly braces, or SCSS. This is the preferred word of using for me. SCSS, and well, Sass is a bit different than CSS because Sass has functions, has mixins, has variables. CSS has also has variables. A couple of years back they included variables into CSS, but Sass has had variables for a long time ago. Now you could see CSS as kind of a lightweight programming language. Is really lightweight. You could use if statements, if else, so far and so on, logical operators. It's a pretty basic but amazing programming language. So let me show you how this works. Normally, a web page reads your CSS, your cascading style sheet, in order to apply style to your web page. Okay. Now it cannot read Sass or SCSS files, and this is why there is this Sass compiler. So if I would hit on watch Sass, which I won't do right now, and please don't do it, it will compile my written CSS, SCSS from here into regular CSS. Now let me show you how this works. First of all, a couple of settings. So let's go to Manage, Settings, and let's search for Sass. Now let's go on Live Sass Compiler right here and edit JSON. Now let's click on Watch Sass and let's see what happens. First of all, the terminal will open, and then a couple of files will create it. And then a couple of files will be created. You can see here a main Sass, a main CSS file was created, and there's no Sass within it. And also a map was created. Now, if I would type in here, let's do a general reset. So let's say star, and we want to do margin 0, padding 0, and hit save. And now let's take a look in our main CSS file. Hey, we got some CSS in it, although we didn't write anything. Now let's also do something that is called nesting, and nesting works like this. Let's say in our body there is a h1 tag, and now actually let's do something else. In our UL we want to OL, because we had our ordered list. In our ordered list we have a unordered list, and we want to style this unordered list LIs with list style none. Okay, so what this will do, if you take a look in our main CSS file, it tells us that in the OL, the UL, and only the list items, you can see it has a selector specificity of 3. This means that we only styled our list styles that are in the unordered list in our ordered list. So this is called nesting. Now another thing with Sass, it has partial. So I create here a new file, and I call this config.scss, and the way we create partial, we type in an underline before the name. Okay, if I hit enter, now if I do something within this, let's say, let me actually copy this one out. So let's cut this out. Let's hit save. Let's take a look in our main CSS. So there's nothing in there. Let's copy it into our config. Let's hit save, and now let's take a look in our main CSS. What do you think would happen? Well, nothing, because partials do not create any CSS, only regular SCSS files. Now, in order to use this partial, we would need to do something like this. At import, and now between quotations, you can use single or double quotes. We will now import our config. Now you could also use a underline here, or just type in config and close it up, hit save. And if I take a look in our main, there you go, our CSS was again generated. Now a couple of things. First of all, let's take a look down here, watching. The Sass compiler is now watching our CSS. If I would go now in our config, take a look down here, hit save, you'll see success. It was successfully compiled. This means there are no errors. If I do something like body, opening brackets, and let's delete this one, hit save, you see we have an error. And now if we go up here, you will see compile error. Invalid CSS after body, blah, 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 was on line 6. Okay, now if I would go to this path, okay, nowhere folder says, main says, just tell me that from the line 6, from this file, the config, and then it's pushed up into line 1 within here, because it's imported here, something went wrong, and it tells you body and opening. It doesn't tell you that how you should fix it, but you just know, hey, there's my error. We go in here, close this up, hit save, and you will see successfully compiled. And if we now would go down here, you will see user main says compiled and a map was compiled. Okay, so that's basically it for the says. Now the next one that I want to show you is a REST client extension. Okay, so let's open this up, REST, let's type in REST client, there we go. Now what REST client does is, this is especially good for front app developers or full stack developers if you are working with a backend API. And basically what this allows you to do is to get the API's response into Visual Studio Code. Now let's install this. Let me close up these files. So let's go to our folder, it's already installed, and now let's create out here somewhere a new file. Let's just call it request. And we're going to save it as a HTTP file. So .http. Now let's type in here a get command. Okay, so get method, HTTP method, and now we will get a HTTPS goes // from a JSON placeholder. So JSON placeholder dot type code and .com. So this is actually a API and / post. Okay, so not you. Now close this up, and now you can see up here, let me close up our terminal. Up here we have now a send request. Now if I click, let me also close up our files here. If I click on send request, HTTP. Oh. Okay, let's try this again. Send request, and hey, there we go. We got our header. Response not found. So the API is no longer there. HTTP1 date when it was requested, Saturday. Then connection close, export, yep, you will get all of your information in here. Okay, so this is pretty useful for those out there who want to use APIs. So let's click on save there. Now, what else I wanted to show you? Oh yeah, Node snippets. If you're using Node, and you will use Node later on, sooner or later we all use Node, then we will have this Node snippets extension, which is extremely useful for Node. So you can see, you just type in Node, then an event which will create a request, what you request, an event, and yeah, the snippets are exceptionally good. It just uses up so much time to type everything out, and as I said, it will not make you a better developer, but it will make you a much quicker developer if you know snippets, if you know shortcuts, if you know which extensions you should install. This is just a must. Now there's another pretty great extension if you're using JavaScript and importing a lot of files. It's called import cost. And basically what this extension does is, you can see image. Hey, the image is not showing. Well, what the image should show, or here it is, no, this is not the image, these are just the settings. It's how much space do the files that you're importing take up. Now, if you're using React Native, then you would need your React Native tools extensions, and it's great for debugging, and just go for it. It's pretty great. You need to use this. And also, if you're using React, then React. So this is one of the most downloaded extensions out there. React Redux, GraphQL, React Native snippets. Now, these are exceptionally useful. You can see down here, where are the snippets? Okay, there are in for importing, module from module, then in for import module, and there are a lot of snippets specific for React, import from React, then React hooks. If you didn't hear about hooks until now, prefixes, Redux snippets, prototype snippets. There are a lot of snippets in here, so it would make your code, at the end it will not make you better, but a quicker developer. So that's basically it for extensions. Snippets are one of Visual Studio Code's most powerful features. And also snippets are what really makes you a speedy developer. Especially when you're developing JavaScript or React or Angular, snippets can save your life and 10,000 times increase your productivity. Now, first of all, where are our snippets? Let's go to Manage, Settings, and type in Snippets. Now here are just a few basic settings for our snippets. You can control whether the snippets are shown with auto suggestions, inline, top, bottom, none. You can control if you want to show snippets, and when this is enabled, as it says here, IntelliSense shows snippet suggestions. But you can find our snippets by going to Edit Settings JSON. But also let me show you something very quick. Now if you open up your command prompt, so Ctrl+Shift+P, and type in snippets, you can do two things. Configure user snippets or general code snippets. Now these are two separate things. Also if you have React environment, also if you have a React or Angular or some kind of environment with, for example, Node.js setup, then you will have different snippets to edit. So let's go to user config snippets. And from here now we can choose what kind of snippets we want to edit. New global snippets, or I think somewhere here is also our basic JavaScript snippets, okay? Now we can also edit JSON snippets, I believe, PHP, there's our React, Vue, TypeScript snippets, JSON, JavaScript, HTML. I just type in React. There we go, JavaScript React snippets. Now, but I'm going to just show you really quickly what the JavaScript snippets do. So let's go into JavaScript. Now, here's an example. A snippet is composed out of a name, for example, print to the console, prefix, log, body, and then you type in something in here, and then a description, log output to the console. Now let's go in here, and so let's create here a new file, Control N, and I'm going to, let's call it this x example.js. We don't need the JSON, just JS. Okay, now within our JS, you know, if I do console log, then this is a snippet. So CLG is for console log, and this will display a message in the console from JavaScript ES6 code snippets. Okay, and here's the example. If you type in CLG, you will get console log, and within there a object. So let's create our own custom console log. Let's try this. Let's go into our JavaScript, and first of all, we need to give it a name. So let's call this one, what should we call it? XCLG. Okay, now we'll create within here a few key value pairs. Now remember, this is a JSON what we're editing. JSONs must always have within quotations the keys and the values. And to be more precise, between double quotes. If you want to know more about JSON and also JavaScript, I have an excellent JavaScript course out there, so check it out. Okay, so within here, we will just type in the prefix. So we said it should have, actually this is the prefix. So our name, which will be here, example, console log. And I'm going to copy this I know I didn't tell you about keyboard shortcuts, but you use Shift, Control, or Command, and this will step to the end, but I want to go a bit back, so Shift here, arrows, and then Control X, go down here, and type in here prefix, exactly as it stands here in the example, prefix, outside, we'll now type in our prefix within quotations, which will be XCLG, okay, comma, and now for our body, within quotations, body, and this will do the following. It will create a console.log and open and close parentheses. Now another comma, and now for the description, we type in description, you can see the snippet description. IntelliSense already knows what we're trying to do. So this will create a custom console log. Okay, let's save this. And now let's go in here. Now we have our console.log. Then we have our CLG. And we also have our EXCLG. And as soon as I type this in, you will see this will create a custom console log user snippet, and it will give us a custom console log. Now the difference between this and this one up here, let me show you again. We close up. If I type in console log and hit enter, you see it gives me an object and the cursor remains within the parentheses. And if I type in here example XCLG, it jumps out of it. And also it doesn't end it with a quotation mark. Now let's go back in here and say, hey, you should end here and jump down to the next line. So let's hit save. Let's go back in here. Let's try this again. XCLG. Let's hit enter, and there we go. Now it has our closing quotations. But we also, hey, console, let me spell something. Console. There we go. Now, if you want to remain within the parentheses, we need to use a variable. So the way we can do that is by going in here and typing in a $sign and the number 1. And this just means, actually, I think it also works without the number 1. So let's just do this, hit save, and let's see what happens when we do our example CLG, hit enter, and no, it doesn't work. It actually needs to have the 1 within it. So let's hit save again, try this again, example console log, and it remains within there. Now, what if we want to have 2 variables? For example, you know, JavaScript has a short snippet for a for loop. So if I type in here for each, and I go down here, you'll see I will get this internal snippet JavaScript language basics. So array.for each element, and this is actually within an arrow function, not even an arrow. Yeah, it's within an arrow function, but it's only one function, so you don't need the parentheses. So let's try this. So if I just type in for each, hit enter, I'll get this snippet. Now you know that we actually need here a, let's say, const of some sort of array. I don't want to use array. Let's say on cars, and we'll assign this to an array of Ford, BMW, I don't know, just a few cars, and let's say Audi. Okay, so hit save, and this car should go in here. So for each car, we want a car, and then we will call this car, and we will assign a style to it, and each car should have a color of, I don't know, something red. Now, how can we do this? How can we create our own snippet with different variables? And this is a perfect example. Let's go into snippets and we see we need to do this. So we will have 1, 2, and here's a third one, but it's the same. So 2 variables. Now let's do this. I'm actually going to hold this in a copy. So Control C, go within JavaScript, and let's say this will be a array, a custom array snippet. Okay, so let's do this. Actually, we need here a comma. I'm going to paste this one in, and I'm going to also copy what we had in our other snippet and paste this one in. So for array, let's just say cos or example array. Doesn't matter. Cos r or xr, example array xr. Okay, and this will create. Now I can copy this. Cut this out. Command or Control X. X for all the Mac users and PC users, and we need here quotation, double quotes, and we also need here double quotes. Now here's our first variable. So this will be $1. Then for the comma will be $2, and here we'll have also $2, and I can actually part because I don't need it. Okay, now for the description. Now I need to go back with this. So let's go back here, and we should also go back here. And for the description, we'll call this will create a custom array. Okay, so let's try this quickly out. Go back in here and let's type in X array X R, and you will see here the first one is blinking. Then we have 2 more variables. So let's type in here cars and then tab, and it will jump to this 2, and we'll type, and here we will type in car. Okay, now if we hit save, this is our custom array, and we can do now style dot color again. Okay, now let's say where are snippets. Now let's give another example of where snippets are extremely useful. For example, if I would do a add event listener, normally a add event listener, which is commonly used, is for an ID, and you will do something like const, and I don't know, let's just say for name we would use document dot get element by ID, and within here we will have the same name within strings of name. Okay, we use our name ID. Now if we do this, we can create a quick snippet exactly as we did for each loop. So let me just copy this. I'm going to go down here, create a new custom. Actually, let me paste it in here. Paste it down here. I'm going to create here, put in here comma, copy the above one, paste it down here, and I'm going to cut this one out and replace it within here. Okay, this is not good, and we don't need you. So this will be a custom get element by ID. Okay, and we will use get ID as the snippet, and this will get a const with a $sign here variable, and here the same variable. Okay, and let's create a custom get element by ID. Now, okay, let's try this quickly out. So let's go back into JavaScript and let's say I did type in here again. No, I got get. Okay, so let's say get ID, Didn't I save this? Yep, I didn't save it. Okay, now it's saved. So let's type in here get ID. If I hit enter, I will get here my ID, and let's say name, and we'll have our name. All right. Now another thing we can create is, for example, I can also use this for add event listener. Let me actually do a event listener so you also have this example. Now normally you would have something like const and then a name. Actually, let's say const a button, and hey, let's do this. So using quickly snippets, I would just say get ID, and I will use ID of button. Okay, let's save this, and now I would do something like button dot add event listener, and we'll listen for the common thing for adding an event listener to a button is a click, and when this click happens, we will use a arrow function, and this function will do something. Now only by having this, little part, we already could create a snippet from this one. Okay, so let me copy this, go back into the syntax, paste it in here, also copy this one, and let's say here custom event click. Okay, say click. Let's see. Let's type in here click. Click event. Event click. Okay, so let's type in here a eve click. And we know that this is going to, this will create, no, this will add a event listener. Okay, now let's change this. Let's cut this one out and paste it in here. And let's go back with this one. A few lines of code. And there we go. Now this should work. Let's save it. So if click, let's go back into our JavaScript. And now we will just do, so button dot if, actually I can't do this. What I can do, how did I save it? I need a variable here. Okay, so let's replace here the button with a variable. Let's save it. Let's go back into our JavaScript and let's say add or eve click. Let's hit enter, and for this we will use our button. Okay, and we basically did the same thing. Quickly edit a event listener. Now another thing you can do is, for example, for a for loop. Now if I type in here for, go down here on our snippet, you will see for let index equals 0, then index small as the length of the array, increment index +1, so increment by itself, and const element. Let me hit enter, and let me explain to you how this is done. Now instead of using numbers, we can use indexes. Now I'm going to copy this, go back into our snippets, paste it in down here, copy this one, and I'm going to rename this custom for loop. And say x for the prefix, and let me take this out of here and replace it within here. Now the way we do this is before the index we add our variable sign, and also here for the array would be the second one, and the index would be the first one again. Now array and index. Okay, now I need to go back with this one. They all need to be on one line. Okay, and this is, whoa, Control Z. There we go. This will add a, and so this will create a custom for loop. Okay, let's hit save and let's try this out. So x4 is our example for loop. x4, let's hit enter. As you can see, for the first one, you can now just type in I and hit tab, and the second one will be cars. Hit save, and there's our array. Actually, don't need this one down here, this one down here. Okay, so I hope you understand snippets. As I said, this is extremely powerful, and snippets are some of the most powerful features of Visual Studio Code. Now, what would be a developer without shortcut keys? The ideal developer never touches the mouse. At least they say they don't. Believe me, you touch the mouse a lot of times, and sometimes it's also good to touch the mouse. Don't worry about it. But if you want to use shortcuts, then there are a lot of shortcuts you can use with Visual Studio Code. And I'm actually going to just go over my preferred ones. And let me first of all show you where are the shortcuts. So if you go down in your Manage tab, then you will see here keyboard shortcuts. Boom. Here are all the keyboard shortcuts. And if you're on a PC, then you will see different shortcuts, but they are pretty much the same. Now let's go over a couple of them, which in my opinion are must-knows. Now, Command Shift P is essential for knowing this. It shows the command palette. In the command palette, you can search for absolutely everything. You can search for files, you can search for settings, you can search for absolutely everything. You can close the command palette by typing escape, by hitting escape, or clicking somewhere else. Control P or Command P on a Mac is a quick open. It can open up each and every files within your folder. Okay, so if I want to jump to this HTML file, or if I want to jump to this CSS file. Now, we know that we can create new files, Control N, but we can also create a new window by holding down Control Shift N, and this will open up a completely new Visual Studio Code window. We could open up a new project, for example. And if we wish to close up a window instance, then we would hold down Control, Shift, and W. And this will close up the instance. Now, Control plus or Command plus will increase or zoom in the entire window, and Control minus or Command minus will zoom out. Command S is save, but Command K and S will open up our keyboard shortcuts. And you may already know this simple commands like Command C for copy, Command V for paste, Command X or Control X for cut, and of course Command Z or Control Z for redo or undo. Now if we are on a start of the line, so if we're here, actually let me demonstrate it here. If I'm here with the cursor and click on Command C, then go one line down, I can Command V or Control V, copy and paste that entire line. If I hold down Alt and use the up and down arrows, I can change a specific line. So for example, if I want this const of cars to be underneath the var name2, I will hold down Alt and then press arrow down, and it will switch places. Of course, if I want to go up again, I just need to click on Alt and arrow up. Now, if I double click on something, it will select the entire word. If that word is more often used in the text, then the first one will be highlighted and the rest of them will be lightly highlighted. Then we can use Command D and it will select the next one and the next one. But take care, as soon as you reach the last one and you hit Command D again, it will start from the top again. Now we already saw this in Find, but if I had hit Command F, then I would find something, and let's say I want to find cars, and if I hit Command H now, then I can press on replace and replace this with fruits. Another pretty useful function is holding down Alt and clicking. Now let's say I want to change, and the best example is normally in a HTML where I have a UI with a plus a, actually I want to integrate an li within it times with a text of list item, and I want to have this 3 times. Now if I want to type in here 1, 2, 3, I cannot do select the item and go and select all 3 of them, and I could jump through it and type in 1, 2, 3. This doesn't work because I'm typing in the same thing all over the place. What I could do, I could now just hold click, type in, hold alt again, then click, then hold alt again. And let's say we want to type in here then something like item 2. Now if I want to open my sidebar on the left, I would just hit Command B, so open it up, then Command B again, and this will close it up. Now that's pretty much it for basic shortcuts. Now let's also take a look at how can we, well, edit a few shortcuts. Now you could also create your custom keyboard shortcuts. You just need to go to Settings, to Manage, then Keyboard Shortcuts, and if you just double click on one of them, then it will open up an editor. Now I can type in here, for example, hey, this should be some kind of combination, so Command and Alt and Right and something like that. But if you don't want to use if you say, nah, I don't want to use this, then you can just hit Escape and go back. Now you can customize and edit each and every shortcut, and I think I always showed you that new file, new advanced file was it? If you create a shortcut that is the same as the default shortcut, then your shortcut, the user shortcut up here, where it says source, you'll see this is a user shortcut, it will override the default shortcut. For example, if I would take copy and I would create a different one, so let's say Command CC and hit enter, then this will be now the user command. But honestly, that is extremely stupid, so let's go back to Command C. So yeah, as I said, you can change and modify each and every shortcut you wish, and you could also import shortcuts. If you come from something different like Atom or Sublime Text or even Visual Studio, then you have your own set of shortcut keys. Now wouldn't it be nice if you could just import them and use Visual Studio Code as you use Atom or Sublime Text? Now there's a way we can achieve this. We would go into extensions and let's search for Sublime Text Keyboard Shortcuts. Actually, Sublime Text Keymap and Settings Importer. Now if I would install this would install the exact keyboard shortcuts that Sublime Text had. Another one would be Atom. So there's Atom Keyboard Map, and I think that's all. I don't know if Bracket has one. Let's type in brackets. No, it doesn't seem to have just the bracket pair colorizer, but I know Visual Studio has one. IntelliCode, no, Visual Studio Mapping. There it is, Keymap, Visual Studio. Yep, there will be the shortcuts for Visual Studio. Now, as I said, if you come from something else, then you could just import your shortcuts and use Visual Studio Code as you have used your other code editor. Okay, so that's pretty much it for shortcuts. Now, after a while, you can get bored with how your code looks or how Visual Studio Code looks. And there's where themes come into play. Now, Visual Studio Code has some integrated themes on its own, and also some icons. So if we take a look, and we could actually go to our manage, go down here, color themes, but first of all, let's look at icon files, because right here on the left side you can create, let's just say we create a new file. We'll call this index, not index, but let's create another style.css file, and also let's create a TypeScript file. So new file, this will be a TypeScript.ts. Then we could also create a JSON file. Hey, where's our CSS file? If we take a look at the icons, JS, HTML, TS for TypeScript, and where's our style or CSS file? Let's create another one. So let's create a new style.css file. And let's delete this HTML. Okay, so there's a JavaScript, HTML, CSS, and TS for TypeScript. And also let's create a JSON file. Let's delete this, data.json. And there we go. Okay, so let's say we have this typically for type styles. Now if we go down in our manage section, manage icons, and click on the file icons theme, then we can, well, we can select none, we can select minimal, and those that are installed in Visual Studio Code. So this will be actually none, standard, and the normal style, the normal icons. Now we also have themes, and in order to demonstrate this, let me actually go here into JavaScript. Now my preferred theme also for creating tutorials and educational content is the basic theme. If we go here on color themes, then you will see we'll get, let me actually close this one up so we can see this. Now let's try this again, go on manage, and then click on color themes. Also the shortcut for this will be Command T. So let's start from above. Now we have our Light Visual Studio theme and also Light Theme Plus. I don't know what the difference between these two is. Also let me have open our command palette here. Let's open up our themes again and let's scroll them. Now quite light, I don't know. If you like this, then be my guest, but I'm more of a darker theme guy. Also, if you want this one, I don't know. But this one is cool, the Abyss theme. And then we have our standard dark Visual Studio Code. Now, my preferred one is Dark Plus. So Dark Plus default dark. And this is because if I have here const, and let me also create a let, and let's call this name. I'm just going to initiate this one. Now you can see that the let and the const, so two variables, and also if I would declare a var name 2, let's say they're basically the same, but the const has a darker blue and this one has a lighter blue, or a teal almost. And also the way functions are colored and so far and so on. This is my perfect theme for an all-around theme. And also because most of you, when you get started, you'll get this basic theme. Now there are also a couple of other themes, like the Can Be Dark, then Monkey and Monkey Diamond. These are pretty nice themes. So this red one, Sunrise Dark, Tomorrow Night Blue, High Contrast, if you like this one, Windows 99, and yeah, initial theme. So I would stick with this one. There are also a few themes that we can download and they're pretty awesome. So let's take a look at a few of them. Now, if you're not satisfied with the themes that Visual Studio Code provides you and also the icons, you could download a couple of pretty awesome themes. Now I would recommend two types of them and we'll go through them, but there are literally thousands of there. So let's take a look at what kind of themes you could download. First of all, there's the material theme. And this, not only that it has the material theme, but it also has a material icons theme. And I would recommend installing them both. Now I'm going to install them both, and it's automatically changing. Let's first of all go through the icons. So let's take a look at what kind of icons they provide us. Now let's go in here, and now let's go to file icons. So manage file icons themes, and now we have a few of them. So let's start with none, then material icon theme. Well, see, this is a typical HTML5 and CSS3 theme or icon for, because now as you can see, this is a typical HTML5 and a CSS3 icon. So let's go down. I just changed them. Didn't want to do this. Let's take the next one. This will be material theme icons. This is more like cartoonies, and also this one is cartoony. I actually need to select them. Then we'll have this one. That's pretty much the same. Then we'll have the minimal, which is, well, the default, and yeah. I would just suggest to stick with whatever is comfortable for you. So I'm going to leave it at material themes, and now let's check out the themes. So color themes, and now's where it gets interesting. Let's go completely up. So after our abyss starts our community material theme. Now let's also open up a JavaScript file. So here, JavaScript, and let's remain here. Now I could close up this extension menu. So let's go into themes. Now, as I said, themes are mainly cosmetic, and whatever theme fits you the best, then choose that one. So let's see, community material theme, panel night, high contrast. Also, this high contrast are pretty popular. Theme pale, ocean night, ocean high contrast, ocean simple, then theme material contrast, material dark. The community theme, I think they also had, oh, there we go. Material simple theme, material dark high contrast, ocean palette. Well, as I said, you can choose whatever theme you want. Typically, people stick to more darker themes because sitting in front of a monitor will hurt your eyes, and you don't want to get eye damage sitting long times in front of a monitor. So just choose the theme you like the most, stick with it, and well, when you get bored of it, change it again. Okay, now there's another package for the themes, and actually it's not a package, but it's a pretty awesome theme. So it's typing Cobalt 2. And this is actually the official theme from WestBoss, so let's just install it. And hey, there we go. It's already in there. Let's go to the JavaScript file. This is a pretty awesome theme actually. But, well, it's a matter of taste. Okay, so that's pretty much it for themes. As I said, themes, it doesn't matter. It doesn't help you code better. It doesn't help you code faster. It's mainly something visual. And if you get tired of your theme, you can change it. Who wants to stare at the same code all day long? Now let's end this with customizing your own theme. Sooner or later you will get fed up with all the themes, and there's a way to customize them. So you can customize a theme by going in, actually open up your command palette, so Control Shift or Command Shift P, and type in here themes. Now you can go into Preferences, Color Themes. Now within here you will choose the Developer Generate Color Themes from current settings. Now when you go in here, here is where you can change your themes. As you can see, you could change the active bar, the color here. You can change the background color, you can change the border color, you can change actually colors for each and every small little item of your theme. And as you can see here in the minimap, there's a lot of things you can change. Now, if you wish to do this, have fun. It'll take you a long time, but maybe you're bored and you can change a couple of things. And just to get it perfect, so it looks and feels like you wish. Okay, so that's pretty much it for themes, I believe. Yeah. The integrated terminal in Visual Studio Code is one of those things you cannot live without. Now, depending on what system you're using, you will have different terminals. For example, to open up the terminal on your Mac, so not the integrated terminal, but the basic terminal, which is in your operating system, you need to go to Spotlight, you need to open up Spotlight and search for terminal. Now this will open up your terminal in your Mac. On a PC, on the other hand, you could either go to Start, open up Start and type in CMD, or just hit the Windows button and type in CMD, hit Enter, and this will open up the terminal that is in the Windows operating system. And the command prompt is default on Windows operating systems, and the terminal is default on Mac operating systems. Now to open up your integrated terminal on Windows machines, you will need to hit Command and backticks. That would be the key left from your number 1 key on the keyboard, and this will open up your integrated terminal. And on a Mac, you would need to hold down Command, Options, and O. And this will open up the integrated terminal. Now by default, in Mac, the default shell will be ZSH. but on a PC it will be PowerShell. You can obviously change both of them as you wish. You could have Bash, or there's a lot of terminals out there. Just choose one and use one. Now, some think that the integrated terminal is not as good as using an external terminal, but I'm pretty much happy with the integrated terminal, so whatever you choose to use, as long as it fulfills your needs, as I said, don't get married to ideas, just use it until it works. Now, for example, if I want to open up on a Mac another instance of the terminal, you'll see here we have this plus. And for this I need to do Control, Shift and tilde. And now you'll see I will have two terminals opened. On a PC, on the other hand, it's Control, Shift, tilde. And this will open up another PowerShell. Now, in order to close the terminal, on a PC, I would do Control, tilde again. This will close it up. But on a Mac, I cannot close it up with Command Options O, because this would just open up another terminal. In order to close the terminal, we can close it from the close panel using the X sign right here on the right. Now you can also check out all of the shortcuts that the terminal has by going on the Manage tab and then Keyboard Shortcuts and typing in Terminal. You will see here all of the shortcuts that you need for a terminal. But what you could also do, open up the command palette. So, either go Manage and Command Palette, or Command or Control Shift P and type in Terminal. And this will automatically give you some functionalities for the terminal. For example, stop command, open in integrated terminal, clear terminal, debug, run, terminal clear. And if you scroll down, you will see all of the shortcut keys and all of the actions. Now let's open up a terminal again. In order to kill an instance, you'll go on this trash can. You can see it's going down, and the same thing on a PC. Let's open up the terminal again. You have two shells opened. Now I want to kill one. Go on the trash can, this will kill one. If I want to maximize the terminal, and this is the same sign for Mac and PC, we'll push it up. If I wanted to push it down again, push it down. If I want to open another instance, again from the plus sign, I could do this, and I could also split them up. And you will see I have on the left side and on the right side now a terminal. If I kill one instance, this actually didn't kill all of the instances, it just killed one of them. So I would open it up again. Now these are two separate terminals now, not two separate instances. If I want to open here up another instance and then choose the first one, you will see it's again split up. So let's kill them all and have only one opened up. Now we could also change a couple of things for our terminal, for example the settings. And for this, let's just go to Settings. And let's actually close the terminal down. Let's search for terminal. Now from here we can change what kind of terminal we want to use. Integrated, external, and we could also install a few other terminals. And you can also do separate settings for Linux, OS X, and Windows. Now if your cursor for the terminal, for example, let me just open up the terminal. If your cursor is too small or too big, you can change it from here. Let's say 5. You could change the scroll sensitivity if you wish. You can change the font size. So let's try at 15. You can see the font size is now larger. You can change the font weight. You can change the font boldness. You can change the letter spacing. So if I would change this to 2, hit enter, you can see the spacing now. Increase the line height. Now I would just leave everything as it was. And let's also go here. 13 back, scroll speed. Scroll back. And yeah, just scroll through it and make your terminal look as you wish. Okay, so now that we're acquainted with the terminal, we can now move on. So I believe that you are using multiple workspaces to work on your code. Now what would happen if you want to have the same workplace experience in one place and the same workspace experience in the other place? And that means you should, and this means you should have exactly the same Visual Studio Code in both places, or in 3 places if you're traveling, for example. So you can have one at work, one at home, and one when you're traveling. When you have a vacation, you should code, okay? So that's what I'm trying to say. No, don't do that, but what you can do is have synchronization set up. Now, there was an extension, or there still is an extension. Let's go to extensions, and actually, let me show you this. So let's type in here sync. And yeah, this was it. Settings synced. Now what will this do? Previously known as Visual Studio Code settings synced, supports while being free and open source. So what can it do? Well, its key features will be to use your GitHub account token and Gits, easy to upload and download on one click, show summary pages on blah blah blah, auto upload latest settings and startup auto upload settings on file changes, share the Gits with other users and let them download your settings. Support GitHub Enterprise, supports programs with @sync keywords, hot host and so far and so on. And what does it sync? All extensions and complete user folder that contains setting files, keyboard, key binding files, launch files, snippet files, which is very important. Actually, all of these are important. So Visual Studio Code extensions and extensions configurations and workspace folders. Shortcuts, upload key, Shift Alt plus U, and download key, Shift Alt plus D. Now, we don't need this anymore because Visual Studio Code now has this little icon down here, which actually close up the extensions, which does the same thing. If we click on it, I'll tell you, well, I'm actually logged into GitHub right now, but what if this is my my workspace, and we have here our home Visual Studio Code. I have here opened up my Visual Studio Code stable edition, and this is the insider edition. So in order to set this up to be synced with this one, as you can see, also the zoom in is different. We have different font styles. Okay, we are in an HTML file. Check out the font styles here, and we have here the regular font styles. So let's go down here and let's turn on sync. Okay, and this will ask me now, hey, do you really want to turn on sync? You say, yes, I do want to turn on sync. Now, what do you wish to sync? Settings, keyboard shortcuts, user snippets, extensions, and UI state. Yes, everything. So if you don't want something, then uncheck it. Now sign in and turn on. Now you can sign in with, actually it asked me first of all in what I wish to sign in. I want to sign in the Insider edition because in the stable edition I am already signed in. So let's click on Insider, and now it will ask me, what do you wish to sign in with? Do you wish to sign in with a Microsoft account or with a GitHub account? Now I'm going to sign in with a GitHub account. So let's click on this, and this will send you to GitHub. And you just click on continue, some authentications, and there we go. Now this will take just a couple of seconds, and setting sim detail is turned on. Okay. Okay, so this was synchronized. Now let's see if we go in here. Let's trust the extensions. Now we'll click on sync now. Go back to Visual Studio Code, and within here, go here and extensions. Go on. Setting sync is on. Okay, now let's make this one larger. Is the current. Now I'm going to go back to the other one. So let's go here and sync now. Let's click on sync now. Let's go in again, settings, and show settings, show sync date. What do we have here? Let me also make this one larger. Okay, so let's click on this. We can edit it here. Now let's go back to the other one, and hey, this shouldn't be this one. Settings, so far and so on. So first of all, if you click through all of these files, you will see your UI states, your settings. These are all JSON files. You can also open them up and see what has changed. Now let's close all of them up. Let's go back to our other Visual Studio Code. So we need to sign out, and we need to sign in again, or turn on sync And yeah, we're going to turn on sync, but this time we're going to take the stable edition. And what this will do, since I'm with GitHub again, we'll now merge. Config detected, merge manually. And we wait just a second here. Let me drag this one down. Okay, so these are all our settings that we did in the other machine. Let's check this out. Accept remote. If we click on accept remote and turn on sync now it's going to sync this edition. As you can see, already the themes are changing, the settings are changing, everything is changing up here, and now I have both machines in here, so inside the Mac and my other Mac. Okay, and now if I would go back to, let's say, this one, let's actually hold both of them now open. Let's turn out, let's change the terminal, let's drag this back here, and let's say I'm going to, so this is the insider edition. Let's say I'm going to go here, and let's say I'm going to change a theme. So let's go to color themes, and let's change this to Cobalt 2. Okay, so now let's go back to the other theme. Let's wait a bit, and boom, this also changed. Okay, so this is pretty neat, and yeah, that's all about syncing. So I hope you're synced up now. Now let's install Node.js on our Macs. So let's search for Node.js in Google, or just type in Node.js in your browser head, and this will lead you to Node.js. Now, depending on the system you're installing it, as said, you will get either the Mac or the Windows version or Linux version. So let's get the recommended version. Let's download it, save it somewhere, and then install it. Okay, so the installation is pretty straightforward as it is for the Windows version. The difference is that Mac uses a whole lot of authentications. So we got Node.js installed. Now let's try it. Where is Node.js? Well, it's in the terminal. So let's open up our terminal and type in Node. And after we type in Node, you will see it will spit up the current version, which is version 12.19.0 for now. If you are watching this video later on, then you will have a different version. Now, Node.js comes installed with npm, or the Node Package Manager. So let's just create a very quick application in Node. So let's open up here. Let's just say main.js. Let's create a new file called main.js. Let's create here a really quick const for HTTP. So const, and this we will set to request, HTTP request, and this should actually not be a capital R. Then another const for host name, which will be just in general IP of 127.0.0.1. Close this one up, and then another const for the port. So port, we're going to set it to 3000. Close this one up, and now let's go to our const server, and let's set this to http.create server. I'm going to set in here a callback function or request resolve, and now arrow function, and we'll set this to a res.resolve will be res.status code equals to 200, so it has been resolved, and res.set header of contact type, content, not contact, and then another string of test/plain. Okay, now let's close this one up, and the last thing we need to do within here is res.end of hello world. Okay, now let's close this one up, and now we can type server.listen, because we want to listen for the port and the host name, And also we'll need here a function which will just console.log the string of server running, and we'll type in here just that our serving is running at http // and we're going to set in the variable here of host name and also the port. And so the variable of this port right here of 3000, and there we go. And we need the port in here. Okay, so now we can go down. In order to run this, we'll type in here node main.js, hit enter. So let's open up another terminal. I made a small mistake there. And now let's run node main.js, hit enter. And I can see server is running at HTTP, blah, blah, blah. And if we click on this and click on follow link, then this will open up our hello world application. So there we go. Okay guys, so that's pretty much it for downloading and installing and running a application on Node. So if you never heard about React, React is a popular JavaScript library developed by Facebook for building web application user interfaces. The Visual Studio Code editor supports React.js, IntelliSense, and code navigation out of the box. React is component-based, which means that we can build encapsulated components that manage their own state, then compose them to make complex UIs. Since component logic is written in JavaScript instead of templates, you can easily pass rich data through your app and keep states out of the DOM. We'll be using the create React app generator to create our first React app. To use the generator as well as run the React application server, you need to have Node.js JavaScript runtime and npm as the Node.js package manager installed. As you may or may not know, npm is included in Node.js, which you can download and install from Node.js downloads. To test that you have Node.js and npm correctly installed on your machine, you can open up your terminal and type node --version and also type npm -version in order to check the version of npm. Now we can create a new React application by typing in npx create -react-app, and within here we also have to give it a name. And by the way, I just created a folder called React app on our desktop and opened it in Visual Studio Code. Now what you see up here, this isn't React, this is just an extension, and we will install it. Actually, we can install it right now. This is just for the snippets. Now, the last thing we need to do here, npx create React app and give the app a name. So let's just call it my-app. Now, if we hit install, this will take a couple of minutes. So you can just sit back and relax and come back when the installation is done. Now that React is installed, you will see your application right here. Now you also have installed your Node modules, which are a lot of them. Right here you will have your application, so your dependencies, your index.html, and so far and so on. So after finishing up the installation, you need to cd into your application and then do npm start in order to run your application. So let's hit enter and wait just a sec. Okay, now Visual Studio Code wants to run my application. Hit OK. And we're waiting for the servers and complete it successfully. And you'll see a browser will open up with your first React application. And let me just grab it and put it up here. There's our React application. If you wish to uninstall React, then you will need to type in npm uninstall-g for global create-react-app. Hit enter, and this will uninstall React from your computer. Angular is a popular JavaScript library developed by Google for building web applications user interfaces. The Visual Studio Code editor supports Angular IntelliSense and code navigation out of the box. We'll be using Angular CLI for this tutorial. To install and use the command line interface as well as run Angular application server, you will need to have Node.js JavaScript runtime and npm, the Node.js package manager, installed. npm is included with Node.js, which you can install from Node.js downloads. Now on the PC, the installation is pretty straightforward. You open up a terminal, you just type in npm space install -g if you want to install it globally, space at angular/CLI. Now, when you hit enter on a PC, it will run, but on a Mac, well, you'll see. Just wait a few seconds. Now, Angular installed here in our Node modules at Angular CLI a protocol, and normally in order to do this, you will need to do something else. I also will leave an article on this, which I found on GitHub, but you should run the following code before running your installation. So before running npm install g Angular, you need to run this code. Sudo cron -r $wami $npm config get prefix and so far and so on. And if you run this, it will ask you a password. Now the password that you will need to insert is your Mac password. So insert that password, and only after that you will have the access to install Angular. Now I'm not going to run this, but what I am going to do, because we are now, after sudo delete this, we are now in our Angular application, and I just created a simple folder before starting this, and this installed my Angular app. You can see all of the dependencies, everything is now installed within here. Now all we need to do is go into our folder here, so I'm going to cd into my app, and now we are in our application, and from here we can now run our application. And for this we're just going to type in ng and serve. Hit enter, and this will take a couple of minutes. But after this is over, we should see there it is on localhost 4000 something something, and here is our application. Now if we click here and click on follow the link, hey, where you going? Or command click. Okay, and this will open up our Angular application, and there we go, our very first Angular application. Okay, so that's pretty much it for installing Angular. Also, if you want to uninstall Angular, you can do this by typing in npm uninstall -g -at Angular. So use exactly the same thing that you use for the installation, and /CLI. Hit enter, and this will uninstall Angular from your machine. Vue.js is a popular JavaScript library for building web application user interfaces, and Visual Studio Code has a built-in support for the Vue.js building blocks, or HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. For richer Vue.js development environment, you can install Vueter extension, which supports Vue.js IntelliSense code snippets and formatting and more. We'll be using the Vue client for the installation. If you're new to Vue.js framework, you can find great documentation and tutorials on Vue.js.org website. To install and use the Vue.js CLI, as well as run the Vue.js application server, you will need to have Node.js JavaScript runtime engine and npm, the Node.js package manager, installed. npm is included with Node.js, which you can install and download from Node.js downloads. Now to install Vue, we need to open up our terminal and type in npm install, and I'm going to install it globally at Vue-CLI. Hit enter, and well, this will take a couple of minutes, but this will install Vue.js on your computer. Now to create an app, we will now type in Vue create my app. Now you can choose whatever you want. This is just an example. I will go with Vue free preview, Vue free Babel, and this will install all the dependencies Vue needs for creating your application. Now that all dependencies are installed, you can see here, in order to go into our folder, our my app folder, we need to type in cd my app, and this will bring us to our folder. Now we are in our application. In order to run it, we need to npm run serve, and if we hit enter, you'll see welcome to your Vue app, and there's our IP address where our application is running. So let's open it and let's take a look at our application. And voila, there's our Vue.js application. In order to uninstall Vue.js, we need to open up another terminal or exit this one and type in npm uninstall -g if you installed it globally at Vue/CLI. Hit enter, and this will uninstall your application. Okay, so that's pretty much it for Vue. Hey, welcome to Python. Now, first of all, this is not a tutorial on using Python. This is just how to install Python, and especially how to integrating it with our Visual Studio Code. So let's get started first of all with what Python is. Python is an interpreted, object-oriented and high-level programming language with dynamic semantics. Its high-level build in data structure combined with dynamic typing and dynamic binding make it very attractive for rapid application development, as well as for use as a script or glue language to connect existing components together. Python is simple. Its easy-learned syntax emphasizes readability and therefore reduce the cost of programming maintenance. Python also supports modules and packages, which encourages program modularity and code reuse. Often programmers fall in love with Python because of the increased productivity it provides. So let's see how can we install first of all Python. Now go to python.org and you will land on this page. From here, if you go to downloads, depending on the operating system you're on, you will either see Windows, Mac, Linux, and so on and so on. If you want to choose a different operating system, then you just have to click on it. Now I just chose Windows, but I want to go back and go on download it for Mac OS. So we're currently at Python 3.9. If there's a newer version, then by all means download that one. So let's click on download Python. Let's choose our path. Let's save it. And after our download is finished, let's install it. Okay, this will open up our package manager, and let's just go ahead and continue. Yes, I agree. Use your authentication, and there we go. Python is now installed. Okay, so now we can close this. So next up, we need to go to our terminal. So let's open up a terminal. Okay, and let me actually zoom in here. So Control plus or Command plus, And let's type in, so first of all, if you type in only Python and -- version, you will get the Python 2 version. So Python 2 is already installed, but what we want to do is get Python 3. So Python 3. I'm just showing you this if you have a, let's say, Python 4 or something, much newer version. So Python 3 and version. Okay, so there we go. We have our Python 3 version of 3.9.0. Now, in order to run Python, we just type in Python and enter, and there we go. Python is running on our machine. But this will run Python 2. So, as we did up here, we also need to tell it explicitly to run Python 3. So let's type in Python 3. Enter, and there we go. Now we're in Python. Now let's go to Visual Studio Code. And let's also install here a extension which is called Python. Because we could, let me actually do this. Let's just create a folder, some kind of folder. Let's say we create a Python folder. My Python. Open this up, open up the folder within Visual Studio Code, and let's create a file. Let's call it my-app.py. This is the way we create a Python file. Now let's click enter. And as soon as you do this, Visual Studio Code will recognize, hey, you're trying to write Python. Would you like to install Python? Because I could write here, for example, print. You can see there's no IntelliSense, there's no nothing. There are no snippets I can do, for example, for or if statements or nothing. It doesn't recognize my Python snippets or my Python IntelliSense. So let's go ahead and install now Python. Now this will automatically send us to this extension. Not install linter. Well, we actually do not need linter for now, at least. Okay, but Python is now installed, and now I could do something like 4, and hey, there we go. You know, the boxes in our snippets section, we explained this. So this boxes means that this is a snippet. So if I click on this 4, this will give me a Python snippet for target list in express and then pass and so far and so on. So this would be a for in loop. Now also we could do if, and if I go down here, you can see I will get a if pass, so a simple if statement or a if else statement. So I click on this, then this will print out a else if statement or if else. Okay, so let me delete this because we still need something. We need to set up our Python path, and we get this by going back into our console. So let's go back. Hey, I have my console open somewhere. Come on, console. There we go. And let's type in here import sys. This will import from the system. We can now import from the system our path, and we get our executable path by typing in print. I'm missing a T here, and within parentheses, I'll now type in sys.executable. And when we hit enter, we will get our path. We need to copy this entire thing. Right click, copy, or Command C, and let's go into our Visual Studio Code editor. Let's go to settings. Let's open up our settings. Now in our settings file, we will just go up here, and this will open up our system settings.json or settings.json. And it doesn't matter where, just somewhere down here, we can now type in a new setting. So let's type in a comma, go down here, and now we could type in Python dot Python path, not Python env, but Python path. And within here, we can now paste in our path for our Python executable. Now let's hit save. Well, I still don't want linter. Relax. Let's go back into our Python file, and just to test it out if this works, we're going to create a simple hello world application. So let's type in here print, and within quotations, we'll type in hello world. Okay, let's hit save. No, I don't want you. Need to click on this little play button And if you do this, normally in the terminal, hello world should appear. And there we go, Python is working. Okay, so that's pretty much it for installing Python.